fair.
But black people are always fair. We're always
No, no, we're
trying to
not.
help everybody.
No, no,
I
no,
mean,
no, no, no,
I'm
no. It's just like
serious.
saying we don't forgive white people. We excuse white people because we take our anger all toward white people out on each other. We're not forgive. We are forgiving
Very
to an
true.
extent, but we are damaged people, and we are not forgiving. We are angry as hell. We are.
Absolutely.
And we need to be honest about that. That's the only way we're going to get well. White people like
I
black
Absolutely.
guess
folks who say, "Oh, well, it's okay." No, it's not okay. Those are the folks that they don't
Hmm.
like. When you say, "I don't like this. This does not feel good to me. This is wrong." We're not forgiving.
Santita,
If that were the case, I
I
know
have
we're
to
up.
agree.
If that were the case, we'd have peace in our community, and we don't have it.
Hmm.
Santita,
Yep.
one thing
Yes,
I learned in history, the oppressed, when they overcome the oppressor, they become the oppressor.
we all do
It's a
that.
cycle. It's a
But
cycle.
that's that's what she said.
I learned that in college.
Absolutely.
But Maria, but what that's the point. The point is that because we're still angry, we turn it on each other. We turn that
Hmm.
anger on each other. We don't do the boycotting, of white products. We literally fight each other.
No, not
When
any.
we
Wait a minute.
say
Not
when we say
anymore. Not any.
we're
Wait,
gonna
no, no, no,
boycott.
Marnie. Not anymore. Now, when we were talking about Black Pride and Black Love, and I am somebody, and I have a dream that we're going to get to the promised land, and we're going to create a beloved community. We were pushing.
We were boycotting.
Today,
That's
we're
very true.
accommodating. So I'm done.
I mean, think about it, Maria.
Ugh.
I can't tell you how many people I heard say they were not going to watch the NFL anymore or the NBA. And guess what? New season started. Everybody was right there in front of their television, right? So
Right.
it's as if it's as if there's certain things that you know um, white people, and it's not, and we have to remember it's not every white person, but right,
Exactly.
um,
That's my point.
it's but it's still but at the end of the day, we know who they are.
Hmm.
When we're saying that we're going to boycott, we say it today, and tomorrow morning we get up and we change our minds, right? It's like, oh, it's not worth it. So what if if I decide to boycott? Everybody's not going to boycott, but what are you doing? What are you
Yeah,
doing,
having
right?
yeah,
Black
right.
people
And
need to get a info level. We can't
it's
continue to,
it's a personal
we got to get an
decision.
info level.
It's a
They have to
personal
learn how
decision.
to fight for the right things. Not say
Exactly.
it. Saying it with your mouth. When you're telling people to get up and protest, and they're saying no, not today, because it looks like it's going to be kind of hot. I don't want to be out there sweating. Why we got to go? Why can't we
Mhm.
go tomorrow? Right?
Yeah, that's the
So
manana syndrome.
And, and
I
every
mean,
and
They're
every
trying to pressure
everybody
the
and everybody's
NBA
got a
right now to
name
support
for it.
this. Hmm.
yeah. I mean, at
Yeah,
the end of the day, where is our fight?
Okay, hold on.
exactly.
We got less than 2 minutes. This was hot. We're going to do this another day, and we're going to bring Reverend Thurston to talk about it. I got to let you all go because we got to get up. Okay.
Have a
And
Thank
great
you.
and I'm going to
time.
post. I was on Metro Focus last night. I forgot to tell you, Marnie. I'm going to post it. Don't worry.
Okay.
In a hot second.
Have a good
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna share the job fair
Oh,
because I still haven't
okay.
gotten that
I got it,
woman.
baby. I got to get off. I
Okay.
got a minute and a
Okay.
half.
All right.
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Love you all.
Okay, ladies.
All right. Thank you. All right. Reverend, that is something we got to talk about. You and I talk about these things all the time, right?
Sure, sure. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, because hey, you all, hey, thank you. I thank you. More and more of you are liking and subscribing. Thank you. My my YouTube page, and I need you to continue to do that. That the Santita Jackson show. But how are you? You know we're talking. You know what we're talking about today. You know what we are talking about today. You know we got to talk about this trial. I mean, and the good reverend's even going to stay.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to have to move you all around because I actually lost some phone lines. How about that? I mean, unbelievable.
Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for
Unbelievable,
free at
unbelievable.
babbel.com.
So I'm
Just
going
go
to
to
pull
babbel.com and
that.
start learning a new language today. That's babbel.com. BABBEL.com.
This is
Okay, we up?
820, where facts
All
matter.
right, we're up. Yes?
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Minneapolis, St. Paul, we're talking about you today. What's going on with that trial of Derek Chauvin, the murder trial of George Floyd? What did you think about it yesterday? We always thought it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It was 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And the mixed martial artist who was part of the pool of witnesses said the way that Derek Chauvin was grinding on George Floyd's neck, he meant to kill him. Oh, wow. That was a lot yesterday. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278, or text me. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. And everyone like and share this program. We're going to be talking about this today. I want to know what you think about what you first saw. Did you expect to see that video? We're going to have some good news from Pastor and really the teaching pastor. And I just love his ministry. I love what he's doing with his ministry, Stephen Thurston Jr. And he is from the Salem Baptist Church and the House of Hope. And of course, he's the author of Mirror Moments. What kind of mirror moment are we having now? It's a lot going on, everybody. And then, of course, we're going to talk about this surge in COVID-19 cases very briefly with the good Dr. Deborah Furholton. And tomorrow we're going to follow up with Dr. Shanina Knighton about ways that we can protect ourselves and why this infection is spreading. Why is COVID-19 spreading, and why is the CDC director so upset? And we're going to have to get equally upset about not having a national health plan yet, right? Because if you get COVID-19, can you afford to pay for the health to get healed? Something to think about that, everybody. Put all the things on the table that you need to have happen. Everybody, let's get to some of these headlines. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 65 degrees today, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a brisk 42 degrees. It will be cloudy. The Dow closed down 234 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed up 99 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 2 points. 5 things to know, everybody, from the Derek Chauvin trial. We're going to be talking about that. Wow. It was actually 9 minutes and 29 seconds. The prosecution's opening argument was given by Jerry Blackwell, a Minneapolis-based lawyer who's brought onto the case by the Minnesota Attorney General, Keith Ellison, and he is working pro bono. He told the jury, "You will learn that on May 25th, 2020, Mr. Derek Chauvin betrayed his badge when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd. Then he put his knee upon his neck and back, grinding and crushing him until the very breath, until the very life was squeezed out of him. I will tell you that you can believe your eyes, that it's a homicide." What do you think about that, everybody? 9 minutes and 29 seconds. 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And don't forget it. You can believe your eyes. And do remember that the Twin Cities is ranked 4th as the worst place for Black Americans to live. Okay, this is a study that came out, and we don't want to forget about it. 24/7 Wall Street published it last year, but this is using data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics. They found that the typical Black household in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul, earns $31,000 a year. That's 43.4% of the median income of a white household in the metro area, which is not 78,000. Black people earn 31,000. White people earn 78,000. The typical white household in the metro actually makes 17,000 more than the $61,000 national figure for white households. Think about that, everybody. For the first time, the Minneapolis teen who opened up about her viral George Floyd video arrest. I mean, everyone remember Darnella Frazier. She was 17 years old at the time, just a baby. And she and her family had to move. She's now a high school senior, and she's listed as a potential witness in the trial. She said, I can't go to sleep in silence. My mind will eat me alive. This child has been traumatized. Who weeps for Darnella Frazier? In the meantime, President Biden and other health officials are sounding the alarm as signs of the COVID-19 disease and the coronavirus are surging all across the country, particularly in Michigan, just to the north. We're going to hear from Dr. Deborah Holden about that in just a couple minutes. What is going on? We've moved beyond the milestone of 30 million cases in the United States. And Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who, in an emotional plea, she is the head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, she went off script at a Monday briefing and she demonstrated her alarm. She, in fact, was in tears. She said, we have so much to look forward to, so much promise and potential of where we are, so much reason for hope. But right now, I'm scared. We're going to talk about that. And that is happening amidst a surge in vaccine availability. The question is, are people taking the vaccines? And after they take the vaccines, are they behaving appropriately? Descendants of FDR and his cabinet are urging President Biden to embrace a New Deal scale public jobs program. Indeed, progressives in Congress are asking him to put together a $10 trillion rebuilding infrastructure program. What do you think about that? And the minimum wage, if would be $44 today, everybody. If it had increased at the same rate as Wall Street bonuses, can you believe that? This came from the Institute for Policy Studies that shows that the U.S. federal minimum wage would just be over $44 an hour if we were moving at the same rate as those on Wall Street. Wow. Just 8% of Americans feel fully rested after a night's sleep. And guess what? Pastor Thurston, U.S. church membership has fallen below the majority for the first time in our history. Americans' memberships at houses of worships continued to decline last year, dropping below 50% for the first time in Gallup's 8-decade trend. In 2020, 47% of Americans said they belonged to a church, synagogue, or mosque, down 50% in 2018 and 70% in 1999. I need some good news.
For sure.
Talk to me.
I was talking to an individual the other day, and they were complaining. It was like they were running down the headlines like you do on a daily basis, but their headlines were pertaining to their personal life. And they kept talking about all the craziness, all the drama, and all the crazy people in their life. And so they were waiting for me to give them some profound response. My response to them was, people can't drive you crazy unless you give them the keys. And they had a look on their face as like the light bulb just went off. And so that's what I want to tell everyone today as a point of good news. I want you to understand that you really can control crazy, but it's not in the way that you think. Because the reality is that we all have crazy people in our lives. And where crazy people are, there's going to be drama. And I'm going to let everybody listening to determine how they define crazy in this context. But the reality is that if you're not in the middle of some drama right now, you just came out of it, or it's probably lurking right around the corner later today. Something's going to jump off in your life possibly. And while we assume that life would be better without all the drama, the truth is that we actually like it, Santita. Think about it. When we share stories with people, the stories that we share, what do they highlight? The drama that has happened or is happening in our life. Come on, let's be honest. We watched the Housewives series and the Basketball Wives series. And for the old school folks, you watched all the soap operas and you watched it for the drama. It's the drama which adds color and richness in our lives that we're ultimately attracted to. So here are some things to take note of concerning the drama that we might find in our life. Number one, it involves emotion. Our response is often more so the problem than the actual event. Number two, it involves people. At the core of any disagreement between two people are unmet expectations. Number three, the drama is often unexpected. We didn't plan for it. We weren't looking for it to happen. It oftentimes just showed up. Number four, it's personal. We don't feel the crazy until it takes us out of our comfort zone. And then number five, it's often exaggerated. We often blow up a situation in our minds, if we're honest, beyond the reality of the event and end up creating a storyline in our mind that isn't always based on facts. And it's the situations that we can't fix or the people that we can't change that often make us the most uncomfortable. And what I need us to understand today is that we can't stop certain events from happening and we can't control what other people say or do. Crazy is always going to be present. So how do we control it? Just a couple of quick things and I'm done. Number one, try to change the situation. Explore every avenue to impact other people's behavior or alter the conditions. Because here's the reality. You can influence people, you can't change them. The only people that you can change are people that are wearing diapers, be them old or young. Number two, try to change your attitude. If you try to change the situation and the needle isn't moving, changing your attitude is the best possible solution. And then number three, try to leave the situation. If you've reached your breaking point and none of the above that I've mentioned is working, it may be time to vacate. But again, this needs to be the final resort that you engage. Drama free. It doesn't mean getting rid of people who create the drama. It means being free from its debilitating effects on our lives. I want us to become free from the craziness of others, but that's really about becoming different on the inside, having that mirror moment, developing the inner strength to handle the craziness that other people bring to our lives.
Amen. Wow. Drama is its own addiction, everybody. Talk about a pandemic. Ugh.
Yeah,
Oh, and the right spiritual prescription is the rehab, right?
that's it. That's it. Make
Boy,
that change and transformation.
make that change. Oh boy. Are you doing the Michael Jackson right now? Just kidding. Okay.
Right. I got my gloves on.
Stay right there. I cannot wait to hear from you as we get your thoughts, as you give us some thoughts of what your congregation are saying this trial of Derek Chauvin. But first we've got COVID-19 just won't turn us loose. We saw the head of the CDC, Dr. Deborah Verholden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, brilliant epidemiologist. We saw her tearfully saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to lose ground. I'm speaking to you now as a wife, as a mother. This is a mess. Wow. Kind of wondered, what is she seeing? And then we're finding that up in Canada, there is the Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization. This AstraZeneca uh, vaccine is very controversial. They are recommending that its use be suspended for people under 55. Can you explain why they would just say under 55 and not over six, not just everybody?
I'm sorry, Santita, say that again. What was for under 55?
Oh, there is the Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization is recommending provinces pause the use of the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine on those under the age of 55 because of safety concerns. And this is coming out of Canada, out of the CBC. It was reported there. Now it's being reported in Chicago. Please look into that.
Honestly, I don't know.
It's a headline this
Yeah,
morning.
I'll
It's a
check it
headline.
out.
But there's been a lot of controversy about AstraZeneca, which you have been hearing about. Why, with all of the controversy, why is it still being used?
Well, you can't. I wouldn't necessarily get my let the headlines be my guide, right? Because, like the brothers say, drama is that's what grabs people attention. That's what sells newspapers. That's what grabs That's what has you click on something, right?
Oh
If you
yeah.
read a headline that says AstraZeneca vaccine is doing fine, but effectiveness is actually 3% lower than they report, you might not click on that. But AstraZeneca lies about, you know,
Yeah, but it's
effectiveness results, and you'll click on it.
well, it's that, and then I'm finding Pfizer and Moderna is not they're not 94 to 95% efficacious. They are 90%. Now that's still great, right? But I think
Yeah.
when we need people to, as they give us this information, because we're not scientists like you, they need to
Sure.
explain it clearly. I mean, because I'm looking at this surge, right? And you're right in Michigan, so you're in the midst of it. We're seeing this surge of infections that has got so many people alarmed, and they're wondering, okay, as we're vaccinating more people, why? But why? We're going to have Dr. Shanina Knighton back on with us tomorrow. But why do you think we're having this surge of infections? Is it travel? I mean, because I'm hearing that the airports are full now. I mean, people are now going on about their business. Is that a mistake, Dr. Deborah Holden?
Well, it depends on what our end game is and what the goal is, right? So anytime, there are moments when I say, man, I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say it
You're
anyway.
not a broken
The
record.
more, I know. It's just like, and you know what my mom said? She said, if it matters, there would be times with the kids I would say things, and I'm like, I've said this 8,000 times. She said, and it could be the 8,001st time that'll be the one that really sticks.
Mm.
So she said, don't worry about it. They somehow what you need when you need it will come to you. It's your job to just keep making sure that they hear what they need to be hearing and that they see what they need to be seeing. So model the behavior that you want from them and keep reinforcing the things with your words that matter. And so, hey, who knew that would also work as an epidemiologist and during the midst of a pandemic? Because I definitely model the behavior that I ask others to bring forward to help us turn the tides. And then I say the things that matter. And I've been consistent. Dr. Fauci originally, with that nonsense, oh, masks aren't really going to help. Then 3 weeks later, oh, everybody needs to wear a mask. I've never done that. There have been things where we've gotten new information, but, the basics of this have remained the same. And my messaging basically has remained the same. So the key with this engagement and reopening and all of that, I want to be very clear. There's no way I think that it would last long term for us to just keep everything in a state of shutdown. I do realize that's not going to work. It's too un-American. People won't go for it. They'll be out here rioting in the streets and all kinds of stuff. And as soon as you increase opportunities for people to come in contact with one another, you are going to get more transmission of virus. That's just basic disease transmission 101. We're talking about something that people breathe in and breathe out. So anytime you've got more people breathing in and out on and around each other, you are going to get increased spread of the virus. That is why the whole point was to get the case rate down, the positivity rate. How many people in the community at any given time are actually positive or have the virus, to get it down as low as possible so that the likelihood that somebody who is infectious, and this is the real problems are the people who are infectious but don't know it, right? That actually have it but don't know it. Those are the real problems because they're just sort of doing what they do without knowing that, hey, I'm actually breathing this virus out on everybody that I'm come in contact with, on every surface that I touch, on everything, right? So anytime you get more of that, you're going to get more transmission. If we would have done a better job, and that even holds now, it's never too late. We can always hit the reset button. That's why we keep getting these surges, because we go through periods where we do better around, doing the work to get that case rate down. And then before we can get it all the way handled, we start to reopen. And it can't be state by state. It just can't be. Why? Because people travel. People travel. So, Texas just reopening fully. Florida just reopening and letting everybody come and live their best life for spring break, maskless. It's like, where were those people going when they left spring break? They came back home. They went back to Michigan. They went back to Ohio, back to Chicago, back to Maryland. You know, they went back to from whence they came. And they brought that good time from Florida with them. All that they breathed in and breathed out, they then breathed out on the plane ride home. They breathed out at the airport when they got home. They breathed it out at the grocery store because you know what? And I just thought this is just amazing. When people go out of town, most people don't buy food before you go out of town. You don't buy groceries. When you know you're going out of town, you eat up the last little stuff you have because it'll go bad while you're traveling. So what is one of the very first things that people have to do when they get back from vacation? They have to go grocery shopping because you don't have milk, you don't have eggs, you don't have those things because you used them up before you left or you threw it out so you wouldn't come home to a rotten refrigerator. So most people come home from vacation and one of the very first things they do is go to the grocery store. So all those spring breakers came home and went to the grocery store and breathed out their good time and their virus on everybody else. It's unfortunate. So, yeah, too many things happened at the same time. And the surge of warm weather also didn't help because the warm weather got people excited about summer. The warm weather got people out. Warm weather got people going to the mall or maybe even to the gym or out to eat and all these other things. So it's like the perfect storm. Mix that with a little bit of COVID fatigue and a false sense of security among those who've been vaccinated, and we're off to the races again.
Oh, wow.
So I think they're calling this our fourth surge, and here we go. And vaccination is not keeping pace with spread. In my county alone, we had 500 cases over the weekend. Numbers closed out on Thursday night. We produced all the stats on Friday. A couple of late breaking numbers came in that shifted our number way up on Friday. And we thought, okay, that was bad, but at least the worst is behind us. Nope. Get the data on Monday morning. We had 500 new cases come in over the weekend. And I know it's real because 3 people that I know called me to tell me that they have COVID in my county. 3 different people.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
This is, so you are seeing it. Well, you know what? When you come back tomorrow, I cannot wait to hear from you and Dr. Knight. You all make my life so easy because all I can do is sit back and just listen. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm on cruise control with Dr. Deborah Furr-Holden. Everybody, please be careful. We are not, we're in the middle of this pandemic. We're not through it yet. We're not. Let's talk about George Floyd, everybody. 9 minutes and 29 seconds, not 8 minutes and 46, that Derek Chauvin had his knee on his neck and he was grinding his knee. 773-763-WCPT. 773-763-9278. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you think about this. Santita Jackson Show just back in a few minutes. Boy.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on 820 AM. WCPT Willow Springs is powered by ComEd. If you need help with your bill, call ComEd at 800-Edison-1.
Okay.
Amy Goodman reports on the news stories rarely covered by the corporate media.
Dylan, can you bring it down just a little bit?
Former Brazilian president Luiz Inácio Lula da
I don't think I can bring it down any more than that.
president again after a judge annulled all
loud.
convictions
All right, I'll see you
against
tomorrow.
Lula.
Okay,
Lula
sweetie,
considered
I'm going to call you
favorite
later
in the
today because I
lead-up
have
to
an
the
idea that I
2018
need
presidential
your
election
buy-in
until
on.
he was put in jail for 18
Okay,
months and
no
forced out of
problem.
the
I need
race.
your,
Democracy Now!
I have something for us
Weeknights
to
at
do
8 on
immediately.
WCPT 820.
And I think you'll enjoy
Chicago's
it.
Progressive Talk.
Okay.
Oh, okay, mama.
we need to clear a path here.
Indeed knows
All right.
unexpected employee
everybody,
turnover
let's-
can stall your business.
Call me. I
Like
want
at
to hear what
Chris's
you're
logistics company.
about
To avoid things
the
grinding to a
Derek
halt, he
Chauvin
needs to get
case.
started hiring right away.
Derek
I need
Chauvin,
Indeed.
Derek Chauvin,
Indeed you
Derek
do.
Chauvin.
And the
Well,
moment
what
you
you
sponsor a
think about
job on
that?
Indeed, you get a short list of quality candidates from our resume database. Visit Indeed.com/credit
everybody,
and get a
please like and share.
$75
Linear
credit
Bob
for
out
your
there in
first
San
sponsored job
Jose, sending
post.
you much love.
Terms and conditions apply.
You know what? There's no way to turn this down at all, Dylan.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
It shouldn't be this loud.
Eastbound 8094 at Torrance. We have a report of a medical emergency. Your trip time to get from the Bishop Ford Freeway to the Indiana Toll Road is 15 minutes.
Better,
Westbound it's
still too
14.
loud.
The inbound
Okay, everybody.
Kennedy,
So
you see a little
please,
congestion
Brian,
now here and there.
Linear
It's
Bob, and
18
Adrian
minutes
Paul,
here to downtown.
and Barbara
Outbound
Jean.
18 as well.
Hey,
Inbound Eisenhower,
Grand Rising
25 minutes,
Kenneth,
390 to
Brian,
downtown. Outbound
Daryl.
24.
Praise the Lord. God
Stevenson
is
traffic
good
is
in
getting
His
heavy.
holy
Attorney
name.
Hoffler, sir.
It's
Thank
25
you.
minutes from the Veterans Memorial Tollway to Lakeshore
Attorney
Drive.
Hoffler?
Outbound 22. Brian, 13 minutes,
CK?
95th to downtown. I-57, 11 minutes,
Okay,
I-80.
great. You can stay with me until 8:30, right?
Southbound, it's 10 minutes, Hollywood to
I can stay
Monroe.
till 8:30.
Okay, because I'm going to have to let a
12
couple of
minutes
people go
from
because I've
Marquette to
lost
Monroe.
2 of my
I
call-in
to Talamonte.
lines.
Okay.
We enter this world of hyper-reality.
but
In case
that's
you
what
didn't
I
know,
have to do.
hyper-reality is the inability of consciousness to distinguish reality from
Keep
a
speaking,
simulation
CK. I
of
want to make sure
reality,
that your
especially in
levels are up. I
technologically
can't hear
advanced
all of
societies.
this,
The
but
action of hyper-reality is
Okay.
to desire
Is that
reality
fine?
in an
it's
attempt
yeah.
to achieve that
I'm going to need
desire
him
to
to pot you
fabricate
up
a
just a
false
little bit.
reality that is to be consumed
Okay, let me
as
increase the
real.
volume on my phone.
Okay, good.
Radio
Thank you.
with Damian Perdue.
And keep
Saturdays
speaking
at 6
so I can make
p.m.
sure
Is
you're
that
not
better?
distorted. That's
WCPT
better.
820.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the
Okay.
WCPT
And make sure you
Veteran
get to
Minute.
it because I'm
On
trying to
April
get
5th,
callers in.
1945, Lieutenant Coleman
Okay.
Young led a group
And
of black officers.
All right, Mr. McKee's here as well.
okay, great.
In an
You can't
attempt to
turn this
integrate a
down at all.
whites-only officers club in Indy.
So,
Dylan?
if I do, so this is the one that feeds through, and this is the only one that won't create an audio feedback loop, is what Matt said. So,
Okay. All right.
Black officers brushed past the commanding officer
Okay,
in an
Dwight?
attempt to enter the officers club and were placed under arrest. Young
Okay, I
and
need-
57
can you-
other black officers were
Let me hear
released to their
you.
quarters on
I
April
can't
9th.
hear you.
The base doubled down on
I'm
its
doing
racist
the best that I
policy
can. Let me
and
hear you,
forced black
Dwight.
and white officers to sign acknowledgement of the new policy, which separated
so
all
little
officers by
distorted.
unit, in effect segregating them by race. 101
Say I'm
black
gonna do a
officers
special.
refused
Let's
to sign
talk
the
about
paper.
can you ask him to move closer to his mic?
The men were eventually
can
released
you
with
move
a
a little closer?
reprimand
Can
on their
you adjust
records, which
the
was later
positioning of
removed
your
by
phone,
President Clinton in
Dwight?
1995. This type of sit-in laid the groundwork for future sit-ins of the civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s. Lieutenant Young
I
would
get
go
it,
on to
but
become the first black mayor of
hearing
Detroit.
your volume through
Hey, hon,
this.
what you doing with your phone?
So I'm going to
Taking
keep you
pictures?
until 7, Dwight.
I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Okay, and then I'm going to call you
Hey,
back
Bobo,
at 7:30.
Do flowers have best friends?
I've lost 2 of my
I'm
phone
sorry.
lines.
I'm afraid I don't know that.
So I've got to toggle
Hey,
everybody.
follow me.
Okay?
I want to show you something.
So can I
So
bring
you want me to stay on?
Look,
No, I need you
flowers
to.
do
I'm going
have
to keep
best
you till
friends.
7, and then I'm going to bring you back at 7:30.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover
Okay.
the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org.
Because I've
to find
lost
a
2 of my
trail near you.
call-in
Brought to you
lines.
by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Because
Who else
facts
do we
matter.
have?
This is the Santita Jackson
Hey,
Show.
everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I want to get your thoughts about the Derek Chauvin murder trial. He has been accused of murdering George Floyd. In 19 years on the force, there were 18 complaints about his behavior lodged against him. Only 16 of them were dismissed without any form of discipline. The people who employed him at the nightclub where he and George Floyd worked complained of his excessively violent nature. It's brutal. So what do you think about this? And as I said on another show yesterday out of New York, I said, George Floyd has actually been on trial for a year. We know there's a Duke University student who is going to be brought up on some disciplinary charges by the university because this person posted George Floyd's entire toxicology report. I mean, now that's illegal, everybody. But there's a thinking out here that this is George Floyd's fault. And that really is part of Derek Chauvin's defense. So I want to know what you're thinking. Call me, text me at 773-763-WCPT. And we have got a wonderful panel. We've got Pastor Stephen Thurston Jr., who stayed on with us because he wanted to weigh in. Of course, he's the pastor of the largest black church in the state of Illinois, teaching pastor, and the author of Mirror Moments. And we've got Dwight McKee, brilliant sociologist from the National Action Network. We have seen Reverend Sharpton and Ben Crump supporting the George Floyd family in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Can't wait to hear from him. Of course, he's also a founding member of Operation Push and the chair of Rainbow Push. of course, is C.K. Hoffler, attorney C.K. Hoffler, and she is the president of the National Bar Association. And, of course, a member of the National Bar Association is attorney Ben Crump. Let me start with you, attorney Hoffler. What did we see yesterday? First of all, let me just say this: 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That's what we thought. No, it was 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Wow, that's significant. Bleeding through the nose and all of that. I mean, what? Oh my gosh. What happened yesterday? What did we see?
Well, first of all, yesterday we got a lot more evidence than we knew. And that's the thing, because there were other cameras, other surveillance that were at play. And we got a bird's eye view as to the case the defense and the plaintiffs are going to put on. The defense is going to make this case all about, they're going to demonize George Floyd. And the plaintiff, the prosecutor, and I call it the plaintiff because I'm a trial lawyer, civil trial lawyer, but the prosecutor's job is going to be to make this case about how awful Derek Chauvin was, his record, how it was actually much longer than we anticipated. George Floyd's plea for his life, how it was actually more exacerbated or more prolonged than we thought, how the conditions were worse than we thought, how what we thought that we saw on that video that the world saw was actually much worse, and that Derek Chauvin is just a bad actor. This is nothing more than a pattern of his behavior that he has been cited for in the police department. But I will just say this, as a trial lawyer, even though we see what both sides are going to present, and even though the evidence just smacks you in the face of the aberration and how bad Derek Chauvin was, the things that he did to George Floyd, how he really killed this man in real time, a jury could still have a hard time convicting him. Why? Believe it or not.
Why?
We see it all the time. We see it all the time. Why? Because a jury may not want to send a police officer away for life, or put a police officer in jail, because there is a presumption that even though law enforcement use excessive use of force, they are protecting the people, number one, and secondly, because they're planting seeds in the minds of the jurors that George Floyd was just a bad person. He was big, he was angry, he was aggressive, and that somehow Derek Chauvin, this sort of thinner, 5'10" or 5'9" police officer, needed to do that to contain him because George Floyd had opioids in his system. He was involved in illegal activities. He was involved in drugs. And in fact, he had a frail heart, and that's why he died.
Hold on.
And that no one else under normal circumstances would have died.
Let me ask you this. Why is it that the judge blocked the use of the term gentle giant? That is how George Floyd was consistently, he was referred to as being a gentle giant. And no one's talking about the brutality, at least not yet, of Derek Chauvin in his job as a bouncer. He wasn't even a bouncer at the nightclub. He was security there, but the nightclub owner said he was excessively brutal. So the reputation of George Floyd is that he's a gentle giant. The private reputation of this former police officer is that he's brutal. We're not hearing about it. Will we?
Well, absolutely, and that's the judge's prerogative, because the other side has filed a motion that they just feel gentle giant is placing type of judgment value on him, just like brutal police officer would be. I don't think it's right, but it is the judge in the judge's discretion to do that. And I think that it is ill-placed. I think but that's the judge. The judge in the judge's mind wants us to be a fair trial in the judge's mind. I think that there should be testimony about who George Floyd was, because they're painting him out as being a beast, a big, huge, even though he was maybe 220 pounds, they're making it seem like he was a 500-pound gorilla, unruly, drugs in his system, a bad person, because they want to demonize him so the jury would feel like, well, he died, he had all these medical conditions, but he brought on this himself, and that somehow that would absolve or minimize what Derek Chauvin did. That's what the defense is trying to do, is plant that seed in the jury's mind. They have planted that seed, actually, in jury selection, in the jury's mind. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the evidence unfolds, Santita, in this case. But it's not a slam dunk. I don't want anyone to feel that cases like this are slam dunk. 9 times out of 10, and sometimes 10 times out of 10 for years, there are no convictions in these cases for police officers. But there's plenty of demonizing of the victims, particularly if they're Black, African-American men and women, and they're mostly men that we see in these instances.
Wow. Reverend Thurston, you are seeing, and one of the things that has been so impressive about your ministry and the Salem Baptist Church is that you have so many young people there. You're so engaged with young people. It was indeed a young person, a 17-year-old girl, Darnella Frazier, who captured this horror. And she's been traumatized by it. She has been traumatized, as any 17-year-old child would. I mean, a 17-year-old is a child to me. And she was holding the hand of someone even younger than she. But somehow or another, she felt compelled to capture this video. You're a sociologist in addition to being a minister, a pastor. Why do you think she felt compelled to take this video?
Yeah, that young people have heard the stories of our predecessors, our ancestors doing their piece in the fight for justice, from the rallies to the marches, things of that nature. As technology has evolved, that's become a tool that we are able to use in our fight. And so I believe that young lady had it in her heart and her mind. I've got to capture this. We've got to tell the story, because so often police officers have that 48-hour window to go back and reframe their story. And so it's incumbent upon people on the scene to provide that footage so that the truth can be told. As the attorney said, it's very rare for police to be convicted of murder. I think since 2005, only 7 officers have been convicted of murder. Here's the reality. The football player for the Atlanta Falcons, the quarterback, Michael Vick. Michael Vick spent more time in prison for dogs that were fighting on his property than any police officer has ever spent for killing an unarmed black man. Wow. Let that sink in. Fighting dogs got more jail time than killing black men.
What did the
and so we continue to perpetuate
that's unbelievable.
the perpetuation of this narrative of the big black beast. That has historical context as well.
What did the 9 minutes and 29 seconds mean to you? I mean, we kept hearing it was a little more than 8 minutes, but it was actually 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And what was shocking was that they played the whole video, Pastor.
Yeah. What really even stood out to me beyond that 9-minute piece was the evidence of when the police called the police on the police, but yet the police were still able to murder in broad daylight. That blue, thick wall of silence and protection is a problem. Qualified immunity is a problem. And those structural pieces need to be eradicated, revamped, and changed for the people that ought to be served and protected to be served and protected.
Dwight McKee, what say you? What did you make of yesterday?
Well, one of the things that the prosecutor said to the jury is, believe what you're looking at. Believe what you're looking at. And the reason he did that is because in those kind of situations, you actually are competing against your own subconscious, because you have bred, you have been raised, you have been programmed to see in the police John Wayne and Roy Rogers and Charleston Heston as Moses and Jesus, and all these images of the great white man coming to the rescue, and it is a profound impact on your psychic, because you were raised just to believe that this is the cavalry, and they always have the good in mind, always have the best your best interest in mind. And so it's very difficult for people to perceive that this is the police who is meaning this for evil, and this guy is a evil guy. This guy is not Roy Rogers and Trigger coming to save me. Conversely, Floyd is competing against the images of King Kong and all of the gangster videos and the images that you see of black men through and through and through and through. That becomes your stereotype of this is who this man is. And so the defense plays upon that. The defense creates that, reinforces that image in your mind, is that the police had to subdue this guy because ultimately he was King Kong and he would have turned over the car and they had no defense against them. And they really had to kill the man to save their own lives. And so he has to reinforce that, yes, this is what you're looking at, and you can believe what you are seeing. This is not an illusion or myth. This is real life. And this is how that works, and this is how that happened. You really have two levels of competition. One, you have that which you are looking at. And secondly, you have that which has been programmed in your mind to believe is reality.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, president of the National Bar Association. I mean, this is the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, more than 65,000 lawyers. Help us all to understand the difference between, I guess, what we see. I mean, we've seen the video. Now we've seen more of the video. And now we're on the legal track. What is the difference between the legal track and, I guess, just the track that we're on? What are we missing here?
Well, honestly, you're not missing anything. If we just use common sense, believe what you see, just as the prosecutor said, we know by believing what we see that George Floyd was killed in broad daylight. But the legal track in a criminal proceeding is beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's got to be a unanimous verdict to convict this police officer beyond a reasonable doubt. So all the defense is going to do is create reasonable doubt, poke holes in the story. How are they poking holes in the story? So this is the difference between the legal track and common sense. And so we don't need to leave our common sense at the door. We saw what we saw. We know what we saw. And even if we assume all the things to be true, he had drugs in his system. He did all these bad things. He was a philanderer, even with white women, that he was a bad domestic partner, that he was big and unruly. Even if all that were true, that did not warrant death. So that's why we have to not leave our common sense at the door. And so that's the track that the court of public opinion, where we have competing tracks. We've got the court of public opinion where common sense should dominate, but it also depends on your orientation, right? And then you have the legal track where evidence is being laid, where it's not 8 minutes and 46 seconds, it's 9 minutes and 29 seconds, that it's much more explosive than what we envisioned, much more explosive, in my impression, much worse for Derek Chauvin, but that's my impression. Much worse for Derek Chauvin, but it's not really what any of us think. It's only about what those jurors believe. And trust me, the way that these cases work, whether it's criminal or civil, is you have jury consultants, and who are psychologists and sociologists who advise usually both sides. And they're high-priced psychologists and sociologists who examine and dissect everything about every single prospective juror. So when you see the lawyers out there picking, doing jury selection, asking certain questions, typically in high-stakes litigation like this, you have jury consultants behind the scenes coaching them, training them on what to ask so that they can condition the jurors. I speak from experience because I do civil trials, and that's what my jury consultants do. They give me the questions, they help, I train, I do more mock trials with jury consultants to help me to pick the right jury than anything. That's where the money is in terms of, because you want someone to help you with the psychology of human beings. Because we're lawyers. We're not trained in psychology and sociology. We're trained at presenting the evidence and maybe persuasion, but jury consultants are. So they're looking into the background of these jurors. What are the buzzwords for these jurors? What are their sensitivities? What are they feeling? What kind of people are there? Where are their communities? All of that due diligence is done. And trust me, those lawyers are using the buzzwords, especially probably the defense lawyers. The buzzwords that's going to resonate, because all they need is to find one person who's a leader in that jury pool who will hang that jury so that there's no chance of a conviction. And what do I mean by that? You want a leader. If you've got, when you're sitting there in jury, back in a jury room, people will come in and they usually take an initial vote. And let's say if it's 60, if it's, you've got 7 people in favor of conviction and 5 people that are holdouts. The job of those who are the leaders or dominant, if they're on the side of conviction, is to persuade those who are the holdouts that there should be a conviction with the evidence. But if you've got a leader amongst those who are holdouts, they are not going to be persuaded no matter what you say. And they will they will make sure that there is a hung jury, meaning there will not be a conviction. So that's why when you're picking your jury, you want to know who are the leaders. And you can tell by the way they're speaking. You can tell by the way they answer questions. You can tell by how strongly they feel about things. And that's the job of the lawyer, to find out how strongly do you feel about this? How strongly do you feel about, policing reform or not? How strongly do you feel about tort reform? How strongly do you feel about communities? Well, all the issues and questions that they ask, they need to find. When someone takes a strong position in your jury pool, you gotta go all in and hone in on their background, why they feel that way, and how long they felt that way. And I always ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, sir or ma'am, you feel very strongly about this. On a scale of 1 to 10, how strongly do you feel about that position? If they say a 10, and it's something that's critical for your case, you got to get that person off that jury, because they're going to be a leader and they're not going to be persuaded no matter what you say. So all of those dynamics are going on in the legal track, Santita, and that's what we're seeing play out. Every examination, every statement, if you have really well-trained, well-positioned lawyers, every single thing that they say in front of that jury is thought out and consistent with their themes. And they're speaking to people based on their background, making eye contact with people based on it, because you can't really speak to the jury. You can't say, Mr. The only time you can say Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so is when you're picking a jury. Once that jury is impaneled, I don't care if something happens to that juror in front of you, you cannot speak to that juror. That is a violation, ethical violation, and you can be sanctioned for that. So the only time they can address the jury again, not by person, but just address them, is in closing. But during the course of the trial, they can make eye contact, they can walk up to them, they can get as close to them, they can do stuff. Everything is for the benefit of that jury. So just remember, all the questions, that legal track is designed to influence that jury depending upon who is doing the questioning, who's doing the cross-examining. Right now, the prosecution is presenting their case. So when the defense is cross-examining witnesses, they're injecting their themes, their theories, and all of that. That's the theatrics of the courtroom. And something as devastating as this, it's sad, because you're saying theatrics in the courtroom, this is a man's life. Where's justice? This is justice. This is justice.
The law.
This is the law. This is how it works. That's why we've got a lot of work to do, Santita. I'm in not the criminal justice system, but I am in the judicial system as a trial lawyer. I see it on all sides. I'll be the first one to say that a lot of this is very, very, it's the preparation. It's the staging of a case. It's the questions. It's the team. It's the witnesses. I don't know if you recall during the Trayvon Martin case, that's a classic example. How about that, the Trayvon Martin case? Remember, people were demonizing. There was this young girl that spoke, and she may not have had everything all lined up because she was just a person who was a friend of Trayvon Martin. They made her out to be a villain.
And she was a child.
A villain.
She was a child.
She was a child. But they made her out to be a villain, someone who didn't know, had a bad this, that. All she was doing was saying she was a friend of Trayvon and speaking truth. But she was such a villain that immediately impacted her credibility in the court of public opinion. And guess what? In communities like that, where Trayvon Martin was tried, and possibly in this community,
yes,
those people have to go back home. It's always the case. They've got to go back home, and they've got to justify to their surroundings, their family and friends, whatever decision they make, and they got to live with it. And so that's why it's so important to find out and get the information on the background.
Okay. Well,
if you have someone who,
no, hold on, because that means you're giving us a lot. But I before Pastor Thurston leaves, because he talks to hundreds of thousands of people every week. I want to know. I mean, because to me, this is not just Minneapolis, St. Paul, my AM 950 radio family. This is Chicago. This is California. This is all the places you've preached and all the places you've been to school all over the world. I mean, we saw marches break out, Pastor Thurston, all over the world, having seen this. Where is this going? I mean, because given all that Attorney Hoffler said, it is very possible. I mean, even after now we've seen it's been it was more than 9 minutes, 9 minutes and 29 seconds. It is possible that this could go in another way that, might not go the way our eyes, maybe I just didn't see it. I mean, talk to me. What do you see? You got
No,
3 minutes.
you saw it, Sandy.
I saw it. I'm just,
Okay.
okay. I know I'm not
Yeah.
crazy. What is this mirroring?
As a spiritual leader, as a community leader, my reality is I'm sick of asking our people to hold their peace, if I can be honest. I'm sick of telling our people, just wait, just pray, just trust the Lord, because we've been praying for 500 years and some stuff ain't changed yet. We need convictions. We need equity and parity. We need a strong signal that's sent, an example that's made out of this former officer. Otherwise, hell is going to break loose. We all have a breaking point, and I believe Black people are really beyond their breaking point. The dam is about to break. And so there has to be something done to send us the message that shows us that our lives do matter, that we are going to be viewed as human beings.
Is it a combination of things, Pastor Thurston? I mean, I have a couple of minutes left here. I mean, is it COVID? I mean, is it just, I mean, it seems like the boot is on our neck too.
Yes. Of course, as your dad often says, when America catches a cold, we got the flu or something to that effect.
Pneumonia.
It's pneumonia. It's pressure from all pressure points upon us. And we need something to give us some reprieve. A conviction would give us some much-needed reprieve. But as the attorney stated, this is going to be a tough case. That legal track is a slippery slope. It's a tricky thing. And we pray that justice will prevail. But I can say that I'm not going to be continuing to ask my people to hold their peace.
Well, you heard it here. We got to talk about it. I mean, are you encouraging people to watch the case? I got 30 seconds.
They got to stay informed. We got to stay connected to what's happening. We got to watch, fight, and pray. If I can be spiritual for a second.
Well, that's nice. You need to get his book, Mirror Moments. Mirror Moments. I mean, because we're having that moment. We are being faced with ourselves. Everybody says, this is not what America is, but it is. It is, Pastor. It really is. This is who we are. Now, this is not who we have to remain, but this is who we are, everybody. So let's talk about it. I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the George Floyd murder that we saw. Let's talk about Derek Chauvin. Let's talk about the Derek Chauvin case. It's really, it's his case. George Floyd has been on trial, but that's not the way this is supposed to be. A Duke University student posted his toxicology report all over the campus. What? What about Derek Chauvin's toxicology report? Has one even been taken? How could anyone do this in good conscience? Kneel on someone's neck for 9.5 minutes. Wow, everybody. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and WCPT 820 in Chicago. Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in just a couple minutes.
When the forgotten poor
Pastor
are
Thurston?
in need of healing, they wait
Yes,
for
ma'am.
Please let me know when you can cut. Can you come back before the week is out to talk about this?
a floating hospital staffed by
I know this is a tough
heroes
week,
of mercy
and
who donate
I
their
need to know if
time
you
to
can,
save
if
lives.
you have any time on Friday. Reverend Aubrey Hendricks, we're going to pre-tape an Easter show with Reverend at 9 o'clock. Let me know if you
To
can
learn
be
more
a
about
part of
Heroes of
it
Mercy,
by radio.
go to mercyships.org.
I have a
Progressive presents an interview with your upstairs neighbor.
Hey,
You're
it's
good
Rick
at
from
9?
upstairs. Yeah, I take it seriously.
I'm
When
good
I
at
play
9.
R&B
Okay,
at 1 in the
perfect.
morning, that's me
Meaning,
saying,
the politics
hey,
of
I'm here
Jesus,
for
the
you.
historical
And I
Jesus,
enjoy
this is
repetitive
like
bass
your
lines.
conversation.
I only use expired batteries in my smoke
Yeah,
detectors.
I'm cool with that. That's
Oh,
perfect.
I
Yeah,
know you
upstairs
are.
neighbors help help people forget their
trust.
troubles. Something else to focus
That's
on.
why I said, let me
want to see how
let
high
me
I can
get
jump?
you while I got you right now. So I need you on Friday.
Let me try again.
And but I also need you on here before the week is out because I need you maybe on Thursday after you talk to everybody on Wednesday.
This update is presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Okay, Thursday.
When you need an expert
Yes?
to help navigate the home loan
Yeah.
process,
So, but Thursday and Friday.
Rocket can.
Okay.
I gotta grab my people when I can.
This is AP News.
All right.
I'm Rita Foley.
Thank you, sweetie. You know I
Back
love
on
you.
the witness
Right
stand today in the George Floyd murder trial,
Okay,
former
but that'll
wrestler
be.
Donald
I'll carry you on from
Williams
6:30,
says
but
he
I'm gonna need you
watched as
longer on
Minneapolis
Thursday.
police officer Derek Chauvin
Okay.
kept his knee on
Okay.
George
All right.
Floyd's neck.
I'm writing this down
AP's
right now.
Julie Walker
Gotta grab my
reports.
stuff while I
Donald
can.
Williams is one of the witnesses prosecutors
Love
are
you,
using
Reverend.
to build their murder and manslaughter case
Talk to you.
against
All right,
Chauvin.
sweetie.
He's a former wrestler who testified he knows a lot about
Dwight?
chokeholds and described the look on
Yeah.
Floyd's
Okay,
face.
we're gonna call you back at 7:30.
You seen his eyes slowly, pale out.
Williams
I
went
have no
on.
more
He was going
lines.
through distress because of the knee.
Dwight?
And he vocalized it that I can't
Okay.
breathe.
Yeah.
I need
Okay,
to get
let
up,
go.
I'm
We're gonna
sorry.
call you back at
And
7:30.
his eyes slowly rolled to the back of his head.
Yeah, I'm
You
just
seen the blood coming out of his nose.
Okay,
Video
but I
of what
need that
happened
line
that day
open.
was also played in court. Chauvin's lawyer said his client did what he was trained
there
to
any
do
way-
and
any other
blamed
way you can
Floyd's
listen?
death on drug use. Audio courtesy Court TV.
Dwight?
I'm Julie Walker.
There was a funeral mass
He
for
just dropped.
Eric
Okay,
Talley
good.
yesterday in Denver.
Okay, now you
He
can
was
get
killed while
Patillo
responding
and
to the
Fancher.
supermarket
Thank
They're
you.
both
in
up.
Boulder
Okay,
that
perfect.
left 10
Pop them
people
up,
dead in
please.
all. Denver's Catholic
Attorney
Archbishop says
Patillo,
Officer
Attorney
Talley
Fancher.
sacrificed his life for others.
Good morning.
Good morning.
President
How are
Biden's
you?
ramping up the fight against COVID-19.
Good.
He's got
90%
great. We got
of all
Attorney
adults
C.K.
in this
Hoffler
country
here.
will be eligible to be vaccinated by April the 19th, just 3 weeks from now.
But he has a warning. He says if we don't keep restrictions in place, like mask wearing, we may well see a fourth surge of the virus.
All
The
right.
CDC director, Rochelle
I wish I could
Walensky,
talk
says
to
she
you all
has a
over all
feeling
of this, but
impending
here
doom.
we are. But I'm
Some
glad you all are
North
here.
Carolina
Can you pop them up
lawmakers
just a
are
little
working on
bit?
getting rid of a requirement
Dylan?
that voters be able to read and write in English.
No, I
It was
need you.
added to the state
I need you to
constitution
be
in
a little louder.
1940.
What are you saying?
Can you pop them up a little bit?
Citizens from voting.
Yes.
Yeah,
This
now
is
it's
AP
not you now.
News.
It's something we have to do here in the studio.
Oh.
It's a big day in New York.
That's good.
The AP's Shelley
No,
Adler has this.
I
New
just
Yorkers
needed,
over 30 can sign up for COVID-19
I need
vaccines
there to be
beginning
some
Tuesday.
kind of match
That
between
announcement from Governor
my
Andrew
volume
Cuomo,
and your
who
volume
adds
on
that
the phone.
everyone over 16 will
Right?
be eligible beginning April 6th.
And so I just needed him
the
to
new
lift you a
guidance
bit.
comes as New York continues to face
Attorney
among the highest
Attorneys
level of
Hoffler,
new
Attorneys Hoffler.
COVID-19
And I've
infections
heard
and
from you, Attorney Fancher.
hospitalizations
Could
in
I
the
hear you
country.
speak?
Infectious disease experts
Yes,
say the rise
testing
in
1, 2,
potentially
3.
more
Perfect.
contagious
Attorney
variants,
Patillo?
along with eased COVID-19 restrictions,
Testing
could
1,
be
2, 3.
fueling the
Okay,
virus's
perfect. That's
spread
better.
both in New
Great,
York
great,
and
great.
New Jersey.
Are you on a
I'm
you're on a
Shelley Adler.
landline, right?
Volkswagen is
Attorney
shifting its
Fancher?
production toward electric
Yes, I am.
vehicles
Yeah.
and now
That
plans to
makes
change
a
its brand
difference.
name here in the
Okay.
U.S. Ready? Volkswagen will
Okay.
become
Okay, but
Volkswagen.
I'm so glad
Get
you all
it?
are here today. Thank
Volts,
you so
electric
much.
vehicles. A
I know,
formal announcement
Linda.
is planned for today.
I know,
I'm
Linda.
Rita
I'm so
Foley,
sorry, but
AP News.
that is something that I cannot help. I can't control that. But
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow
it'll
Springs.
be down in a
And
minute.
streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com.
Oh wow!
We are
I can't
Chicago's
wait to go to
progressive
Art.
talk, where
I'm gonna let
facts
you all have
matter.
at it. So everyone, give me your elevator pitch
Now,
because
your
Art
WCPT
has a
820
conversation
Chicago traffic
driver.
update.
Okay.
Metro is reporting a delay on the
CK?
Union Pacific West line due to freight train interference.
CK?
Yes, Santita?
Okay, Robert and CK, Robert and Mark. Please give me your elevator pitch. I've got a caller who's going to
18-minute drive time from the toll road to the Bishop Ford
who's
Freeway.
really
Now
going
it's
to
15
send
minutes.
you all
On the units
over the
for
side of the
15
bridge.
minutes, like Cook to Montrose. On the Kennedy, delays
Oh
start at
yeah, I can't
Canfield.
wait
23 minutes, so
for us
here
to
to
bring him
downtown.
on.
11 from
Because
Montrose.
he's
8
speaking
to
to a school of
Express.
thought out here.
About 18 minutes
Everybody,
downtown
I
to
want you to please
Eisenhower,
call me,
31
text me at
390 to
773.
downtown.
I
Now
need you to
25.
call me. I want to hear your
Stevenson,
voices
29
today.
minutes.
And I want
Veterans
America to hear
Memorial
your
Tollway
voices.
to
We need
Lakeshore
people
Drive.
to hear
Line
from
15
you.
minutes from
Hear what
95th to
you
downtown.
thought
That's traffic.
about
I'm
yesterday's
Jim Alamonte.
proceedings. Hear what you were
Tax
expecting.
season can be a big headache if
People need
identity
to hear
thieves
you.
steal
People
personal
need to hear
info from
from
your
you.
tax
And
forms.
people need not
LifeLock
just
helps
talk
protect,
about
monitor,
you.
and
People
restore
need
your
to hear
identity.
from
No
you.
one can monitor
So
all
please call me
transactions
at
at all businesses, but
773
you can save up to to 25% off your first year at lifelock.com.
Blessings to
Promo
all
code
of you today
RISK.
for all of your support. You know I
Does
love
learning
you.
a language feel
Please
like this?
go over
No
to
habla
the
español.
Santita Jackson Show on YouTube.
It's hablo.
Oh, this is so. This background is so loud. I'm
Good
gonna have to
day,
work
good
on
morning.
this.
I think.
I can say, je m'appelle David, but that's
If you want,
really it.
no.
When you learn a a language, you want to actually use
so
it.
loud.
Babbel
And
is
it's loud for the Facebook audience too. Thank you.
I can also put on the auto mix, but you may hear the echo in the beginning.
No, I don't want to hear the echo in the beginning. That's because that's too distracting. It would be one thing if I heard it for like a half a second, but I hear it for far too long. But it's too loud for the
Right. Well, the current way we have it routed is through the system which plays the commercials. So the volume you're hearing it at is the volume we're sending out to listeners.
I know.
So that's the only way you don't get delay.
I hear you. I'm saying this. They're saying it's too loud.
Okay, I'll just turn it off.
No. I need you to be able to stay on point. So stay right where you are. Okay, everybody. So let's get to the callers.
Matt.
Call me. No worries. Whatever you and Matt worked out, stay with that. Stay with that. Because that cuts down on any errors that we can have. Whew. So, all right, everybody. So, what Kenneth, you said Pharaoh let my people go, let my people's mind go. Well,
moving and
Kenneth,
eating.
people need to let Pharaoh go. I think that's the bigger problem, right? Something my father used to talk about all the time.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the site of the Derek Chauvin trial. I want to hear what your thoughts are as we look at who's responsible for the murder of George Floyd. What will the jury find? What did you see yesterday? What did you think about the 9.5 minutes that Derek Chauvin and the other police officers were on this man's body? While Derek Chauvin was on his neck, the other police officers were kneeling on his body. Wow. It was so bad that the 911 dispatcher called the police on the police. She said, there's something that's not right here. 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. I want you to call me. I want you to text me at this number. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text, and let's get to it. I want you to follow me on the Santita Jackson Show page on YouTube. Like and subscribe, and follow me on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and meet the morning stars over there. And everybody like and share. Meet Linear Bob out there in San Jose, and Michael Ann out west, and Barbara Jean, and Shirley from Philadelphia, and Brian Martin, and Samantha, and Daryl, and L. Stanley Davis, and oh my goodness, so many of you. Keith Food up there in New York, Carmelita Rivera, Shelby, and all my people, Yolanda and Raphael. Hey, sweetie, oh boy. All my people from all over the world to join us so we can talk about, hey, Renato, how you doing? And the morning family, to everybody, Barbara Bacon. We're going to talk today about the George Floyd murder. We're going to talk about the Derek Chauvin case. What did you think of yesterday's proceedings? I want to hear from you. 773-763-WCPT. Let's get to a few of these headlines so that we can get to this magnificent panel that we have got today. Chicago will have a high of 65 degrees, mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 42 degrees and cloudy. The Dow closed down 234 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 99 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 2 points. Prosecutors accused Derek Chauvin of killing George Floyd as the trial started. Wow. What do you think about that? They're saying that believe your eyes, it's a homicide. That is according to the lawyer for the Minnesota prosecutor who was brought in pro bono by the state attorney general, Keith Ellison. Jerry Blackwell began by saying that what was all this about in the first place? It was about a counterfeit $20 bill at a convenience store. They could have written him a ticket, even if he did it on purpose. It's a minor offense. And then you heard the voice of George Floyd. I can't breathe, man. Please, and knee on my neck. I can't move. And he started shouting for his mama. Well, the lawyer said, believe your eyes. It is a homicide. So what do you think about that, everybody? Is it a homicide or is it something else? Remember that the Twin Cities ranks as the 4th worst place for Black people to live. This is according to a study from the Institute for Policy Studies. Now, they use data from the U.S. Census Bureau, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Bureau of Justice Statistics. The study found that the typical Black household in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Bloomington earns $34,174 a year. That's 43% of the median income of the typical white household in the metro area, which is $78,000, $706. Wow. 34,000 for black people, 78,000 for white people. The typical white household in the metro area makes 17,000 more than the national median for white people. Wow. And we are all thinking about Darnella Frazier, the young teenager, 17 years old at the time. She decided to take the video of what she thought was a really bad situation, and she's had to move, and she's turned down all media requests for interviews, but she just spoke to the Star Tribune. And she said the world needed to see what I was seeing. Stuff like this happens in silence too many times. Bless her heart. Bless her heart. President Biden and other health officials leading, starting with Dr. Walensky, who's the head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. She had an emotional appearance yesterday, in which she started crying. She said, "I'm going to reflect on the recurring feeling I have of impending doom. We have so much to look forward to, so much promise and potential of where we are, and so much reason for hope. But right now, I am scared." Wow. They're expecting a monstrous surge, and we're seeing AstraZeneca is having trouble up in Canada. Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization is recommending the provinces pause the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine on those under the age of 55 because of safety concerns. And yet it's being used around the world. How is that? Descendants of FDR and his cabinet urged Biden to embrace a New Deal scale public jobs program. In fact, progressives in Congress are demanding a $10 trillion recovery bill for the United States of America. The minimum wage would be $44 a day if it had increased at the same rate as Wall Street bonuses, according to the Institute for Policy Studies. Can you believe that? $44 an hour. Wouldn't you love to make that? And just 8% of Americans are feeling fully rested after a full night of sleep. A lot of stress we're under, and U.S. church membership has fallen below 50% for the first time that since Gallup has been taking that information. We've got a tremendous panel here. We're joined by Attorney Mark Fansher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, brilliant civil rights lawyer and civil libertarian, and Attorney Robert Patillo, director of the Southeastern Regional Office of Rainbow Push. He hosts his own show on WAOK from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. And, of course, today, C.K. Hoffler is going to have her own show on WAOK. It starts at 11 o'clock, which is 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. She's going to be talking about this. She has been laying out the case for us. Stay right there, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. I want Robert Patillo to tell us what he saw yesterday in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is reputed to be among the worst places for Black Americans to live. And indeed, it's the fourth worst. Wow. Kind of proved that yesterday. 9 minutes, 29 seconds. What say you?
Well, it was interesting because there were a couple of expected things in the opening day of the trial and a couple unexpected. I found interesting the defense argument because they used the buck defense as I expected, which is where you paint the African American victim as somehow being this creature. So you heard them talk about George Floyd being 6'5", how strong he was, how the officers were only 5'9", how they cowered in front of this monstrous creature. He was hopped up on drugs with the power of 10 men. So, the same old Reconstruction era descriptions of black men. But then at the same time that they were arguing that they were facing this large, black, dark, powerful force, they also made the argument of the eggshell plaintiff. That, well, he was so sickly, that he had so many other conditions at the exact same time, that whether they were there or not, that he was going to fall over like a leaf and just die, whether the officers had showed up. So on the one hand, you have a drug-addicted Superman who was throwing cars and juggling buildings, but also this frail character who was going to fall and die at any moment. So I'm not quite sure if the defense is keyed in on exactly which strategy they are going to use going forward. Additionally, I did have an issue with the prosecution characterizing it as a homicide. You always want to get the idea of murder into the jury's mind. You want to repeat that. You want to make it a mantra, because homicide is just what it sounds like. Homicide is the killing of a man. It is man death. The question isn't whether or not George Floyd died, The question is whether or not Derek Chauvin murdered him. And I think the prosecution could have done a better job of emphasizing that and pushing that, because at the end of the day, if it's a manslaughter charge, a manslaughter is a homicide. It's just a lower level culpability. There's justifiable homicide. There's reckless homicide. There's negligent homicide. There's all sorts of homicides that are available in the toolkit of charges. We need to be sure that they are enforcing and pushing this concept into the jury's mind at every corner, that Derek Chauvin intentionally murdered George Floyd, that this death was avoidable, that it was because of his at least reckless and more likely intentional conduct, because the police officer knows for a fact that putting your knee on somebody's neck, particularly given the soft and fragile nature of this Superman, that can cause the death. So I do think the prosecution missed a opportunity there. You have to get the idea in early. You have to keep reiterating it often. You want to make sure that when they go back into that deliberation room, that the only concept in their mind is murder.
Attorney Fancher, what did you see?
Well, I think that these cases are so unusual in the sense that if a police officer is going to be prosecuted, it is clearly a crime. Whether it's murder or whether it's some other lesser act of violence, it is clearly a crime if it finds its way into a court. But the issue is, in my mind, how we as a community, particularly a Black community, are prepared to deal with this emotionally and mentally. Because we have seen these cases prosecuted in the past. We have seen how even in the face of obvious guilt, clear evidence of guilt, we've seen how police officers walk free. And, it will be a tragedy to me, in my mind, if there is an outcome in this trial which is completely a travesty, completely unwarranted and unmerited by the evidence, that we're still in an emotional state where we're shocked by this, where we're, we should be enraged, but it should be controlled rage. Because we need to grow as a community. We need to recognize and understand that we're in the middle of a society that is governed by institutions which were designed to keep us under its thumb. And that this is not a society, these are not institutions where we can expect justice. We need to be clear thinking about the fact that all the time we need to be strategizing and organizing to dismantle this system. And so, on the one hand, I think it's really been extraordinary and wonderful that there is a trial in this case where a record can be created which shows yet again the contradictions and the intensity of the hostility which is directed toward an oppressed community, and the devastating impact of police violence and all of that. And I hope for the correct outcome in this case. But I do also hope that at the end of it, whatever the outcome, that we as a community have grown and that we have sharpened our analysis, that we're better prepared to deal with the ongoing war that we have to fight against a system that continues to put our people in these situations where they're subject, where they're vulnerable to murder and attacks by agents of the state.
Before I come to you, Attorney Hoffler, who laid out so many of the nuances of this case brilliantly on the other side of the break, let me go to Art from McHenry because I want to catch him. I don't know if you're on your way to work or what,
Hello?
but I want to catch you. How you doing, Art?
Hi, I'm a truck driver. I'm always at work.
Oh, bless your heart. Be careful, okay? Okay.
Always. It's my pride and joy driving trucks. But anyhow, I don't know what to say. I mean, I've been watching this stuff since the beginning, and even nobody wants to talk about how he was in the back of a police cruiser already. All he had to do was stop freaking out, go to where he had to go, to jail, whatever the situation was. But then he begged to be taken out of the car, claiming he couldn't breathe the whole time he was in the back seat of that squad car. And then when they took him out, they had to pin him on the ground because it took 3 guys to hold him down. 3. There were 3 officers holding him down because he was flipping out. He was on drugs. I got a family. My brother's a heroin addict. I know what this stuff does to these people. They flip out when something's not going their way.
Why don't you respond to Art? Because he did not appear to be violent. Go on, Robert, and then.
Well, okay.
Well, okay, no, really.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know who's going to respond.
CK, you respond.
I'll just say, yeah.
Okay, Robert, then you, CK. Robert?
Okay.
Yeah, just very quickly. George Floyd isn't on trial. The person who killed him is on trial. What drugs was Derek Chauvin on? Why don't we know that information? What was his training? What was his mental state when he was killed that person?
The officer did everything he was asked. Can you please take me out of the car? I can't breathe. Mom. The whole time he was freaking out in the back of the car. So the officer brought him out of the car. Was trying to do what he was asking to make you more comfortable.
Wait. Stop, everybody. Stop here. Art, I want you to be heard.
Yeah.
I want you to know we have a civil tone here.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want you shouting at him. And
I know, but you'll cut me off and you give him all the time in the world to say what he's got to say. I get cut off every time I'm on the radio.
You have not been cut off here. I'm just establishing the rules of engagement here. Now, I need you to be calm.
I know. Okay. I'm done.
Make your point. Well, I mean, there are a lot of Arts out here. And that's part of the defense. That this brute needed to have, I guess someone just needs to choke the life out of you to stop you from doing what
they do, Santita. They do. That's the commonly held belief in this society. I mean, it is the product of a doctrine of white supremacy. It is the product of carefully trained minds that suggest that black people are somehow brutish, that they're subhuman. That if you had reversed the situation and you had a black officer on the neck of a white defendant for 10 minutes, then there would be no suggestion that it was the fault of the person who was killed. We have to understand how white supremacy works. When a black person is somehow killed or hurt by an agent of the state, it's the fault of the black person.
Hold on one moment, Mark.
Can I respond?
No, because
can I respond?
You can, but hold on. Art, I want you to respond after you hear them. Let me just say this before we continue. No, Art, this is a comfortable place to have uncomfortable conversations. But what I will not allow anyone on the panel, and you're part of the panel, is to be disrespectful. We're not going to do that. You don't need to shout at anyone. You have not been cut off. My board operator did not disengage you from the line. You are here. I want you to be heard, and I want them to hear you. We will hear. No, don't tell me that. I'm on the air 5 days a week, 6 days a week. This is how I conduct every show that I host. You're not going to be disrespectful to me either. You're not going to do that. That's part of the problem. That's part of what got this man killed. Disrespect. I won't have it. CK?
Yes, so I just wanted to respond to what Art is saying, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, of course, and that's part of what this country embraces. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, no matter what condition George Floyd was in. He did not deserve to die or to be killed. There are probably 10 different options, at least, that Derek Chauvin had to de-escalate the situation without standing on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds until he died. We all know, and all may have family members who are heroin addicts, drug addicts, and who do get out of control. And there are many, many things that can be done, and law enforcement is trained to do this, to de-escalate the situation. But that was not done here. So George Floyd did not kill himself. He did not kill himself. The way that we have to look at in a court of law, you take the person as you find them. A lot of people arrested by the police have heart issues, have breathing issues, are on drugs, have ingested drugs. But it doesn't mean that they should be killed by the police. A lot of times when police get involved, in fact, there is substance abuse. That's not new. That's part of their training. But under no circumstances should any police officer kill someone simply because they think the person is being unruly. When police are called into a situation or observe something, a lot of times there is some unruliness. But that doesn't give them license to kill. When they have tools and they've been trained to de-escalate a situation. That's what this is about. License to kill. That's the issue in this case. Did he use excessive force? There were so many other options. That's what the jury is going to be asked to consider. We have to look. This is the Derek Chauvin trial. So all of how he came to the table as a police officer, with his training, with his record, with his background, with his history, all of that is what this trial is about. The defense is putting these red herrings up, saying, look here, not there. This is not the George Floyd murder trial. George Floyd did not kill himself. He did not commit suicide. He did not kill anyone. Derek Chauvin did. Now, whether people think it was justifiable, whether they think he had a good reason to do it, that's a different question. That's for the jury to decide. But let's be clear, it is Derek Chauvin who's on trial. His actions as a law enforcement officer who is trained to protect people, protect the community, not kill the community. It is not George Floyd, but Derek Chauvin whose actions are on trial. And I think that is what is missing in this analysis. I do respect that Art has the right to feel what he feels. Yes. I'm just suggesting focus on the issues in a criminal trial where someone has been killed, murdered, dead, will never come back.
And I am suggesting here on this show, I will respect all opinions. Look, what do they say? I'm a Baptist, and I am, but I'm glad God is not. I don't expect and I don't need people to agree with me. But what I require in all of my human endeavorings is to be respected. And I require when I host an event or this show that you do the same. We can disagree without being disagreeable. We can even raise our voices and get spirited, but we're not going to be disrespectful. We're not going to do that. If Derek Chauvin respected human life, he would not have killed this man. And he did do that. And you can talk about the foot on the knee on the neck. That's what he did. If he hadn't been choked for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, he'd more than likely be alive. At least he would have lived through that day. I don't know what God had in store for him beyond that. But we've got to be respectful. Period. That is my requirement here. That's it. Now we're going to do that. And I told you, I don't mind a spirited conversation. But a disrespectful one, I will not countenance. I'm Santita Jackson, AM 950 Radio on and WCPT 820 in Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Chicago, coming to you all worldwide. The Santita Jackson Show, back in just a few minutes. CK, thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow.
8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs.
Okay, thank you. And you know, Santita, what I'm doing is every show, I'm starting off until the trial is over with commentary on my show on this case.
Hey, Stephanie Miller.
Every show for the first 10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to the other topics. So I'm going to be covering this with a lot of detail, a lot of analysis, a lot of content.
I want you to do that, but I need you and Mark. I want to also talk about the Georgia, the boycotts that people call for with respect to Georgia. I don't want to move on from this tomorrow, but I do want us to talk about that tomorrow as well. but I'd like to keep you all
What's
in
in store for your
rolling
business
panel.
this week at Staples?
Because
Printing you
this is
new
such a
signs
important
for the
case.
times.
And
Get
we need
back to
people.
business with custom printed
Art
signs
has
and
a
sales
point of
materials.
view. I don't
Staples
agree
has
with it,
hundreds of designs to
but
choose from,
believe
or
me,
just
that
upload your own.
thinking.
And now at Staples, get 15% off signs,
That's the
posters, or
defense that's being
decals when
used
you
for
spend
Derek Chauvin. That's
$75
real.
or more.
Some items printed same day when ordered
So
before
I've
2
got,
p.m.
but
Save big on
Dwight,
custom
let me
printing
let you
at
go.
Staples.
Ends
And once I
5/29/21.
let you go, I can
Exclusions
bring
apply.
Dwight
Limit one
on
offer per
this line.
customer. See
So I
store
love you,
associate or
Dylan.
visit staples.com/signage for
Thank you.
details.
Thank
Right,
you.
bye-bye.
Dylan, please bring Dwight on this
You're
line that was
listening to
just vacated
WCPT
so that I can
820.
have as many
Here's
callers.
the latest.
Oh, I brought them on the warm line, so it's fine.
Okay, perfect.
We got another
Okay,
call.
and we have great. We have Wade,
Westbound traffic is
Kristen,
heavy.
and
Climb to
Maine,
Calumet Avenue.
and
There was a
others.
crash. It's
And
cleared
so
now. Your travel
you all
time
can
is
keep
19
talking. We
minutes.
have like
Indiana
2
Toll
minutes
Road,
before we come
Bishop
back
Ford
up.
Freeway eastbound at
Mark
15.
and Robert
In about 8
Patillo.
minutes, you're 16
Hello, do we have
minutes.
Dwight
Lake
back?
Montrose on the Kennedy, 25
I'm
minutes.
on.
Air
Okay,
to
I knew
downtown.
you are.
11 from Montrose, 9 to the
And you're
Express.
on with
Outbound
2
20
of your
minutes to the
favorites.
airport. Eisenhower's now
Mark,
35 minutes, 390 to downtown.
the
Outbound
coolest
25.
man in the world,
Stevenson,
and
26
Robert.
minutes from the Veterans Memorial
I
Tollway to
mean,
Lakeshore Drive. Ryan,
what can we say about
Well, my
Robert?
son doesn't think I'm cool at all.
Oh no,
11 minutes. I
you know, both of you are the mic.
Bishop
You
Ford's
all
at
people,
10.
you make people
Lakeshore
drop the
Drive,
mic.
21 minutes either way between
Love it.
Hollywood and Marquette. That's traffic.
You know, but
I'm
we have to
Jalamonte.
continue to put out there. This is the
Hey,
fourth
looking
worst
for a
city
winning
in the
team on a
United
winning
States for black
station?
people to
You
live.
found it right here on WCPT 820 AM.
Oh.
Join Danny Carlino, Dan Marvelous Marver, Marty B, the man on the street, Dave Salgado with updates, and yours truly, Jerry Riles, for your sports and entertainment needs.
Oh, I
Looking
love
for
Jerry
real sports
Riles. He
talk?
was my
Got it.
first
Real radio
manager.
right here.
He was
Just
the
real
general
stuff.
manager
We're
at
here.
WVLN when I
Rewind
started.
Sports 60 every Sunday from 6 to 7 p.m. on WCPT 820 AM. Real sports, real talk, just plain real. Lock it in.
What's in store for your business this week at Staples?
Printing you new signs for the times.
Get back to business with custom printed signs and sales materials. Staples has hundreds of designs to choose from, or just upload your own.
And now at Staples, get 15% off signs, posters, or decals when you spend $75 or more.
Some items printed same day when ordered before 2 p.m.
Save big on custom
Okay, we
printing
have a lot
at
of callers.
Staples.
Ends 5/29/21. Exclusions apply. Limit one offer per customer. See store associate or visit staples.com/signage for details.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to
You all
take
want to
care of a
continue to
loved
talk
one,
to each other?
you
You
know
all
how
just want
hard
to
it
stir
is
it up
getting
and
that
wait until we
clunky,
get on
old-style wheelchair in and out of your car.
Oh boy!
Introducing the
What
Feather
time we
Chair
back on the air
Wheelchair.
today?
At 13 pounds, it's the
Ricardo, how you
world's
doing?
lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds
Ricardo
and fits
says,
neatly in your
I
trunk,
love you so
backseat, or
much. I
closet,
love you,
so
Ricardo.
you can take it
Oh,
everywhere.
you have all my
And
respect
it's
after
only
that call.
available right here. Order
You all
yours
love it
today
when I
and get a
rant.
free
What is up with
wheelchair
that?
case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair, the
Oh,
world's
my
lightest
gosh.
Well,
wheelchair.
I'm glad you let him on though. That's an important voice to be heard.
Don't you think so?
Sorry,
Why do
no
you think it's
Medicare
important?
or
And I want you
insurance
to say it on the air as
accepted. So
well.
call right now to
Oh,
order
it
yours.
explains why so many police officers are acquitted. As long as that type of thinking is present in communities, then that's going to be the result that you get when you bring these cases. And that's why people shouldn't be shocked.
Don't be shocked and hear him.
WCPT
I'm glad he felt that he
where
could call
facts
in.
matter.
I'm so glad. All right.
This is the Santita Jackson
Wow,
Show.
wow. It's the Santita Jackson Show, Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. I am Santita Jackson. This is AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and WCPT 820 in Chicago, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station and the voice of progressive Minnesota. Whew, a whole lot has been going on. Art, I want to thank you for calling in. I really do. Because you got things started here. And I want you to call us at 773-763-WCPT. Even if the line is busy, continue to call us at 773-763-9278. You can text us at that number as well. GWCMC Lawyers gives you the opportunity to do that. Shout out to you, Ricardo. Said, I love you so much, Santita. You have all my respect after that call. RESPCT. Loving it. And, you know, Mark, before we get to, because Dwight McKee rejoins us, and we've got a lot of callers we need to get to, why was Art's call, to your way of thinking, an important one to hear? I felt that it was important, and I'm glad that he called.
Oh, I am too, because I think that it helps us to understand why in so many of these cases when police officers are prosecuted, that they're acquitted. His thinking is very common among many members of the white working class. And it is the product of so much
sociologically and historically that has happened in this country, much of it revolving around the fact that there have been so many crimes committed against communities of color. I mean, from the genocide that's been carried out against Native Americans, from the enslavement of Africans, to the internment of Asians, it goes on and on and on. And on some level, white society understands all of the crimes that have been committed in the name of protecting their interests. And on some level, there is an extreme amount of guilt that is carried within this community about these things. And in order to cope with it psychologically, it has been necessary for there to be the construction of an entire body of thought that in some way rationalizes and justifies all of these things, because otherwise people would go crazy. And so part of this involves, on some level, and it's not always conscious or deliberate, but this is a way of coping. They go into a state of denial about what happens to people of color. They rationalize and justify the things that police officers do to people of color. And this is a very precise example of how, they have gone to extraordinary lengths to try and explain how George Floyd somehow is responsible for his own death, notwithstanding clear evidence to the contrary. It's the only way that you can live with this state of affairs. And it's the reason why it is necessary for people to say that Black Lives Matter. This fundamental idea of the humanity of Black people is something that has not been fully embraced by so many within the society because of this deep psychological dilemma that white society finds itself in because of its history. And until we really understand it, and until somebody really grapples with it and tries to deconstruct it and rehabilitate the psychology of white supremacy and the way that it's impacted, particularly the white community and communities of color who have internalized it, we're going to continue to have confusion, frustration, and rage and shock when we get these verdicts, which excuse the most horrible behavior by police officers.
Let me get to Dwight very quickly before I get to the callers. What say you?
Oh, the exact same thing. I start off by saying that you're competing against your own self-conscious is that art is not the exception. Art is the rule. And so all you have to have is one on any jury to hang the jury. And the defense counts on the one. And it's very hard for the prosecution to get past the one. Archie Bunker is real, y'all. That's not a made-up personality, and he's not from Alabama. He's from New York. That's how these people think, and that's what they think about us. And we can't, it's going to be very hard to compete against that in a court of law, because the other thing you compete with, one, is the law itself, because they make the laws in behalf of the police. And then the judge himself, he kind of sifts and decides what laws and what rules of engagement you can use, and that's always in behalf of the policeman. It's you really left with no redress. And my fear is this is gonna come down to a Popeye syndrome, where people are finally gonna say, "I've had all I can stand, and I can't stand no more," and they're gonna freak out and burn this town down.
Let me go to Wade. Wade, what's on your mind? Wade? Is Wade there? Wade, how are you?
I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. What's on your mind, hon?
Okay. Good morning, kings and queens. That brother that just spoke, I respect his thoughts and opinions every morning that he gives his opinions. And I just want to say something real quick and let you guys get on with it. Is it my understanding that each of those two individuals knew each other outside of that? They had a job together at a club or something like that.
They worked in the same place.
My thing is this. Right. Yes. Now, my thing is this. A defensive counsel for George Floyd should bring up all of those things, text messages, anybody that witnessed them arguing at their work facility where they worked at, those things need to be brought about. And because if you know a person and you have a passion for that person, and it comes to that hate, and you have that opportunity, such as what that individual had, he took advantage of that opportunity because he's a police officer. Now, that's my opinion. And if they don't do that, the same as they did with Trayvon Martin, they didn't speak for his grounds to stand his ground. They only spoke about government's chance to stand his ground, but didn't give his opinion. His defense counsel didn't speak for Trayvon Martin to stand his ground, and those defense counsels that represent us in these kind of cases, folk and somewhat get stifled with doing those things what they should do and not be worried about the repercussions when they bring up those things such as background of the individuals like that officer, because he has a history, a real bad history of doing things with individuals outside of his job and on his job. So that's my opinion on this. And like the brother just said, it's gonna be Popeye if they just let it keep going on. I'm going to be 50 this year, but there's a lot of young dudes that's watching this. A lot of young women that's watching it, and they are ready to pop, and this is the reason for them to pop. So I hope that someone gets to the bottom of it before it gets into this chaos that it could be going into. I'm going to hang up and let you guys talk, and I'm going to value the opinions and learn from you like I did today. Good day, Queen, King and Queens. Yeah.
We learned from you, Wade, and you're part of the panel. How about that? Love it. This show doesn't make it without you, my sweet. Thank you so much. I'm sending you much love. You be careful out there today, okay?
All right. I will. You too as well.
Sending you much love. Marie is excuse me. It's Maine. I'm sorry, Maine. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how you doing, Ms. Jackson? What I wanted to speak on was, how the police officer was actually demonstrating. He was demonstrating his power from the days of slavery and the overseer, and he was showing that the big, strong black slave, how he is in control of him, and how he is demonstrating to the other people. And what he's doing is usually they'll take the biggest and the strongest, and they'll put them on the whipping post and whatever. And this is somewhat what they was doing with my man. His name slipped my mind just that quick. Anyway, this is what the police officer was doing. He was demonstrating to the other people that this can happen to you. You see what's happening to Floyd. Now he's a big, strong, powerful man, and he was demonstrating to the people, and he made an example, what was called an example out of him by doing what he did, and he made it all the way to the point of death, saying that that we can't kill you. And we have seen where police officers have killed people, like here in Chicago. They killed that young man, shot him 16 times. And you see what happened with that. So the police are the overseers, the modern day overseers, to separate the capitalists and the oligarchs between the people of the country of America, and especially black people and black and brown people, and to keep them under control somewhat like they did during the days of slavery. So they act in such a way, in an overseer type of way. And if they kill you, that's all right, because they'll get off, because they're doing this in protection of the capitalists and the oligarchs.
Bless your heart. Man, you think you're on to something. Let me go to Christian. Christian, what's on your mind today?
Right on.
Right on to you too. I love it. Christian, what's on your mind?
Oh, maybe are you going for me? Oh, it's Chris. It's Chris from Wheaton. I think maybe the caller might have missed my name.
How are you?
But that's all right. I'm good. Hey, I just wanted to commend you and laud you for the grace with which you handled the previous caller as always, the picture of dignity.
Thank you.
But it's very important to remember this because, that caller was really saying something. That big black buck defense is at the heart of white supremacy. That is a huge component of this, and people who do not have black family friends, they never hugged a black friend, they have the innate fear. It's at the heart of white supremacy. And I will share a personal anecdote before I run into the school and do my job, is that, as a diabetic, I've had violent out-of-control seizures that have been out of control. And they've called cops, and, my mom's had to call 911 to help me, talking about, Hulk smash level craziness. Your body is really fighting to stay alive. They didn't kill me. You know what I mean? These people didn't kill me, and I was completely out of control. And fighting cops and fighting EMTs and stuff. So when anyone tries to claim this whole, like your panel so intelligently and wisely points out, that black buck defense is at the heart of many of these issues. When he's an unstoppable force of physical nature, it was like him. We can't stop him. That's not it. That speaks to a deep emasculation and fear and anxiety that lives in white culture.
Chris, you're white. Explain this to me, because it's something that I have not been able to wrap my arms around. It. I think it's important for us to talk to people about their experiences as opposed to just talking about people. You are white. You understand this from the inside out. Please explain it. What is this big black buck thing with black men? Explain it.
I can only speak to my own experience, which may be considered slightly unique among white culture, but I will say that if you live in a bubble of whiteness and you have never, been in physical, contact with black people or black culture, because of the media and because of just the pernicious kind of consistent perceptions of black males in particular, there's a physical intimidation. There's a fear. There's an undercurrent of sexual fear and sexual anxiety. And this goes back to the pre-Reconstruction era. These are well documented things. It's hard to explain it because it's just like an unspoken, deep cultural thing that exists within our structure. That is it's inbred into us. It comes from this culture that we live in. I wish I could understand it better, but all I know is that when you have black people in your family and life, when you've spent, had dinners with people, you see humanity. You have to experience others to see their humanity. And when we other people, it makes it very easy to devalue them and dehumanize them. When you're not a person, you can do whatever. So, them all claiming that he took a couple of these street, fake OxyContin pills or whatever. That doesn't make you get jacked up, but it's that unspoken fear. He's big, he's athletic, he's strong. We have to fear him,
And
I wish I could understand it more deeply.
And he might get my woman. Let's not leave that
out. Well, right, and that's the thing, I didn't want to be blunt about it, but there's that, that goes back to pre-Civil War era stuff. And it speaks to a deep feeling of insecurity that's at the heart of white supremacy in this country. It's built on it. Sexual fear and sexual emasculation and intimidation are at the heart of many of these white supremacist ideas that exist. Wow. And it's a shame and it's a tragedy, but it's real. And these things need to be owned up to. So, we know that Derek Chauvin had worked alongside, we know that story about them working at the club or whatever. This guy might have carried all kinds of little weird intimidation, kind of a hater vibe to George Floyd.
Because we do know George Floyd was very popular with professional basketball players, and when they were in town, they'd come to the club and all of that. His best friend was a professional basketball player, and he was tall. Yeah. I'm sure ladies liked him, and it's very interesting because Derek Chauvin was married to a woman of color. I'm feeling you. I'm working with you. I'm working with you, Chris. Thank you. How's your diabetes, by the way?
As always.
How's your diabetes?
It's great. I'm blessed and highly favored. It's handled. I'm doing my part. I got to keep my blood sugar down and keep that water flowing. But I'm blessed and I appreciate you. So you just keep up the great work. You have a great rest of the day, Santita.
Happy Holy Week, my sweet. Love you much.
Love you. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetie. Let me go to Carrie. Carrie, what's on your mind? Carrie?
When I was listening to Art talk, it reminded me of a story is why I called. Mm-hmm. This happened over 10 years ago or longer. it was a story down here in Champaign, and down here, this is like being in the South to me.
Like being in the
Well,
South?
anyway,
Yes, Champagne. Yes.
oh, yeah,
Come on. Yes.
Central Illinois.
You leave Chicago,
But
you're South. Period. You know this.
exactly. So during the story, it was an altercation between this black family and this white family on the street I lived in. Lived on at one time, and what happened was that someone called the police and like 12 officers showed up. So they were talking to the black family and talking to the white family, which it was only one. The white family next door to me, it was just one guy. It was the family's brother. He was in his 30s at the time. Well, anyway, after they were talking, the police talked to both families. The black family went into the house, and everything was, it was over. But the white guy, he didn't like the result of it, so he starts using all type of profanity towards the 12 officers. I mean, loud, real loud. The officers didn't even do anything. He was in their face, basically, like when he was talking, like spitting in their face. And then after he walked away, he jumped in his car. He peeled rubber down the street. Now the speed limit is only 20. This guy did 50, going around the block. Those police officers stood there, 12 of them, did nothing. And he left, and he was gone for a long time. They called backup. Still, this man was not arrested or anything. Now, if Art knew his history, and this is not like you always say, and your guest, this is nothing new. So he needs to understand, when a man dies for $20, that is totally unacceptable and inexcusable. That should never happen. Floyd complied with everything Chauvin had told him in the car to get out, do everything. Okay, he didn't want to get in the car because he knew he was going to die. So you supposed to put your knee on his neck and then kill him then for $20? And then we don't even know where's the $20 that supposedly, the story I heard, that he had cashed $100 bills and bought something else at another store.
Yeah.
And then he had went there and purchased something with the $20 bill.
Everyone in Minneapolis on the black side of town said that he had used a genuine $100 bill. And in a purchase, he received change. Among them was that $20 bill. And he used it. So he was given a counterfeit bill. But I don't know who calls the police at one of these little corner stores because someone has passed along a counterfeit $20 bill. They generally paste it in the window. And something. I mean, Carrie, stay right there because we're closing down on time. But I want you to stay with me for a hot second, okay? Because I want to very quickly hear from Robert. Robert, how you doing, sweetie?
Good. How are you?
Great hearing your voice.
I think great to hear you too. I think this goes back to the recruitment process. So we tend to give veterans preference in many cities throughout the country, and I would argue that's a bad idea. So I believe Chauvin's background was he was in the military, so trained to kill. He was a military police officer. So we really need to ask ourselves, does that make sense to give these guys preferential treatment to take roles in law enforcement? If they're used to being in Baghdad or Fallujah or some other area, we saw those terrible images, if you remember, the military police out of the one prison where all the people were kind of treated subhuman, naked and, waterboarded and all that kind of stuff, right? So, I mean, is that the kind of people we want to select? So if they're taking that mentality, from the military role into the city where they're supposed to protect and serve, I think that's where a lot of this comes from. So I think we should stop the preferential treatment for veterans. If anything, they should either be level or even a little bit lower in terms of the selection process. And if they are going to bring those people on, they really need a deep background check on them and a psychological exam to make sure that they're going to kind of treat all people equally, not subhuman, or, carry out some of their sick fantasies of what they're going to do to these people. It's horrible. The mentality that some of them are bringing into law enforcement.
So you know what,
And I don't
Robert?
think it's feasible for others.
You're making a brilliant point, which takes us back to the Eisenhower address, the valedictory address, just as he was leaving office in 1961, when he warned of the spiritual effects of the militarization of the culture. Remember? Well, you don't remember, but of course, that's what he said in the speech. And there's something to be said for that. Let me go to you, James, very quick. James, very quickly, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Well, from what I heard, seeing the testimony or the questioning yesterday, and what I understand of the case is they're making this a drug substance person under the influence case. Yes. And with that being said, I just see it as totally being mistreated. It should have been a medical emergency, not a violent, putting on of somebody. What I would love to see is the prosecution ask for and bring up past history of Chauvin and the other officers and how they dealt with other past cases of people under the influence of drugs.
Well, I mean, does it matter to you that Chauvin had a reputation for violence at the nightclub? I mean, even the nightclub owner.
Absolutely. But pertaining absolutely to this case, what did they treat George Floyd differently because he's a person of color, a black man? Did they treat him differently because he was under the influence than what the case history might show of how they've dealt with other people?
Stay right there. I want to get some closing thoughts from my panel. I've got like 30 seconds apiece, really, for each of you. Dwight McKee, 30 seconds.
I'm not sure that it would matter because somebody with a drug problem that's white has a medical condition. Somebody who has a drug condition that's black is a criminal. And so the same presumptions are not made. For these white kids on drugs, they bring in these antibiotics. To these black kids on drugs, they bring handcuffs. It's a different system that's built on racism. It's built on a disdain and a contempt. I think that the brother made a great point when he talked about how lopsided the culture is, that these people are operating off of guilt and fear.
Hold on. I want you to carry that to stay right there. Carry that to the other side of the break. But I want to get closing thoughts from you, Robert. 30 seconds.
It's important for us to understand what the defense strategy is. The fact that we are talking about what was in George Floyd's system and not what was in the cop's system, the fact that we were talking about George Floyd's medical conditions and not the cop's past, the fact that we were talking about George Floyd in general, the dead person, instead of the defendant, is exactly what the defense is trying to do. So we have to work on not getting distracted by what they throw up. This is all chaff. This is all flares to distract from the actual target.
30 seconds, Attorney Mark Fancher. And of course, you can hear Robert Patillo every Sunday on WAOK in Atlanta from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. 30 seconds, Attorney Fancher.
Yes, I think our discussion this morning has highlighted the intensity and the severity of the psychological disorder which has resulted from white supremacy. And it's terrible that it has afflicted our white brothers and sisters, but we've internalized it as people of color as well. And for these things, it may be that only God Almighty will be able to intervene and sort all of it out and put us on the right path.
We do need a reset. And wow, look at us talking about this in Holy Week. Everybody, of course, we'll have more of this and so much more on the Santita Jackson Show. Stay right here. I'm going to get some closing thoughts from this magnificent panel. Thank you so much for being with us today. I love you all. I'm Santita Jackson. God bless you. Be safe. Until tomorrow. God bless. Dwight McKee, I didn't want to miss any more of you.
Rain, avocado season, because what does that mean? It means more squirrels than usual, which
Can
also
you turn that off, Dylan? Okay, perfect. Dwight McKee?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just trying to get everybody a quick word before they got out because we had a lot.
Everybody dropped except for Kerry and McKee and Fancher.
Okay.
Oh, no, that was basically my point, is that it's very hard to overcome fear and and guilt, even with real evidence, even with video evidence. It's very hard to overcome those kind of emotions.
Well, Carrie, what's on your mind? Because Carrie, Dwight, as you well know, and Mark Fancher, you understand because you are up in Michigan. We get to Detroit and Grand Rapids and a few other places, and we try to stay huddled in those places. We feel fairly safe there, fairly safe. When you got to the rural areas in the Midwest, it gets tight. Carrie, what's on your mind?
Well, my fear is that this will turn into just like Jason Van Dyke, in that he will get the same amount of time when he should spend the rest of his life in prison, because there was no excuse for what happened. You can't justify what we saw. To me, when the guy made the point about people in the service, in my opinion, no person in the service should be a police officer, because you're trained to kill. That's what you're there for. Your GI, government issue. You're there to kill. And we got to take a different look at this approach on policing, on who can be a police officer. They need anybody in military service need to go carry mail, do something that's not involved with violence or trying to be a social worker or communicating with the public, because I feel they don't have those type of skills, and they're used to killing black and brown people. And that's where I stand on that. And it's just pathetic.
Well, but I think we're getting closer to it, because guess what? Now people are talking about it, Carrie. People are now beginning to look at it. Okay, now how is it that we have? I mean, because the military, they're able to go through the line first at the airport, and on and on and on, and we salute them when we're in public. I said, I think you should salute anyone who's of service. But I think that teachers are of service. I think that doctors are of service. I think the garbage workers are of service. If you don't believe that, let them go on strike, right? So, I mean, I think that our thinking is off, too.
I hate that the NFL does that. When you go to a game, stand up and salute. Come on, please. Like you said, let the teachers stand up. Let the nurse. My wife is a nurse practitioner. Let her salute them. So let the people truly of service. Everybody. Not just soldiers and police officers.
That's right. You can't exalt military service over civilian service in a civilian society.
And they pay the NFL to do this.
Well, remember the NFL is a nonprofit corporation itself. Yeah. So there's so much that you can read into that. Mark Fancher, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that all of that is exactly correct. But the thing is that it's not just the entry of former military people into law enforcement that gives policing a military culture. It's established as a militaristic or a quasi-military or paramilitary type of force. And I think that what really has to happen is a redefinition of what a police officer is. Right now the definition of a police officer is somebody who is a soldier, somebody who's trained to kill, somebody who can shoot well, somebody who can grapple, somebody who can use weapons and that kind of thing. But there are different roles that are expected for emergency response. So that in this case, in the Floyd case, rather than sending a soldier who's trained to kill, if in fact, just for the sake of discussion, George Floyd was having a drug episode, then send somebody who's trained to deal with drug episodes. If someone is suicidal, send someone there who's trained to deal with that type of crisis. If someone is dealing with some other type of emotional problem, send somebody who's trained to do that. Those kinds of people can and should be regarded as police officers as well, even if they don't carry guns, even if they are not trained as soldiers. There are different roles that are needed by the community, for emergency response, and soldiers are not always prepared to respond to every emergency, and that's why we have these problems.
Carrie? Dwight, you have a response?
He said it all for me.
All right. Well, that's Evangelist Travis from Paris, Tennessee, sending you much love. Yeah, I think, Dwight and Carrie and uh, Attorney Fancher, I think that a lot has been said that should give us cause to pause and think, really. Attorney Fancher, you've brought up the point that we are really at an inflection point. A lot of things we're beginning to see can really be blessings, even though they are great disappointments to us in the natural, as my great grandmother Tibby used to say, Dwight, who he knew so well. In the natural, with man's eyes, with woman's eyes, we see hurt, disappointment, anger. We don't see in the supernatural. That is, with God's eyes. And wait a minute, God is trying to prune us and make us right, not just better, but make us right. He's trying to pull something out of us that doesn't need to be there anymore. And it gives me a lot of hope to hear people, and yes, white people question the militarization of our police force. Because that means to me that they're questioning the militarization of our society, and that's a good thing. Mark Fancher and Dwight McKee and
It
Carrie.
is. Yeah, and the thing I've noted this a number of times in recent months, and that is that George Floyd was not the first horrific, horrible killing by police that we have seen in real time on video. We've had a whole series of them, but none of those others sparked the kind of global reaction that George Floyd's did. And I really do believe that it was on that occasion that God reached into the hearts of the world and said, you will process this one. You will understand this one. And there are things that, can and do happen that are beyond our comprehension.
Well, like Emmett Till.
Yeah, but in the course of that though, in this situation, because it was so penetrating and so obvious and so overt, is that there has to be some justice. If this policeman gets away, take my word for it, the system, a lot of the systems are going to come crashing down because people will lose hope. And once they lose hope, chaos and revenge and the worst part of human nature kicks in. And so I'm hoping that all of this analysis and all of this introspection, that there is some retribution, that this policeman is convicted. Because if he's not, trust me, fellas, the walls are going to come tumbling down on this one.
And see, it's my hope that they don't. And I hope that the discussions that precede the verdict, and it may be a vain hope, but I'm hoping that it will take people to a point where they have a conscious understanding of a need for the walls to be brought down, but not in a chaotic and disorganized way. That we need to begin to really appreciate the fact that this does not work for us. It's been, hardwired to work against us, and it needs to be dismantled, but in an organized kind of a way, in a way that's not chaotic, and in a way that, continues to respect the humanity of all people. That can happen if people are conscious and if they're thinking. The big question is, are they going to be conscious? Are they going to be thinking? And are they going to respond to this in a way that is more productive than it is destructive?
Amen to that. Because, at the end of the day, for me, it is about the building of the beloved community. And you don't destroy, you're building. Satan comes to destroy, and Satan is a liar. All of that. We've got to move toward construction, not destruction, self-destruction, or otherwise. And you can't cut off your nose to spite your face. People have to move toward real reform, real change. That's what people need to be inspired to do. If the verdict, if the verdict doesn't come the way of justice, and to me, justice is to charge, and is to find this man guilty of murder and the other police officers as well. They were all in it, and that should happen.
Well, I listen to guys. when I listen to guys like Steven Thurston, who is the ultimate activist pacifist, who's a theologian, a scholar, and a minister. When I hear him speak for his generation, he says that even I can't tell the people not to react to this one. It gives me real pause because I know his spirit.
Yeah.
And it must
and
be
his
a
history.
point of in his history and his family's history.
That's right.
So it must be a point of exhaustion, and I'm just sensing the exhaustion around the country of enough is enough.
And
I have the same hopes and dreams that you all have. I'm just a social scientist. I try to deal with more realism.
Well, I think I'm dealing with realism. Dr. King was dealing with realism, Dwight. Um, and Carrie, are you still there?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
listening.
because I want you to be part of this too. I think Dr. King was a realist, and he said toward the end of his life, if I'm the last man in the room who is going to be nonviolent, I am going to do that. But he was also clear that this was a house on fire. Now, are we going to stand inside of it? Are we going to stand outside of it and lob more fire bombs? Are we going to stand inside of it and burn up or die of smoke inhalation? Or are we going to put the fire out? Ultimately,
he was the last one. He was the last one in the room, and you all remember 40 cities burned when he got shot.
and who won? And we did not win. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, Dwight, that that young people and otherwise, and elders will not take to the streets. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it will be destructive, and it will be about much more than George Floyd, as it was last spring and last summer. There's a lot.
No doubt about it.
There's a lot that's on the table here. Yes, I'm sorry.
And the thing to remember is that as horrible as what we're going through, is, there are other countries where it's been worse, in terms of the state just making people disappear, subjecting people to protracted torture and all of those kinds of things. And in many countries, the response is one that's organized, it's organized revolution. It may involve guerrilla warfare. It may involve, some type of direct action that's nonviolent. The tactics vary, but it's organized. It's not just random chaotic destruction. And so when we find ourselves as a community or as communities that are facing state terror, facing state violence, it is perfectly normal and natural for us to want to get rid of those forces that are causing us problems. The question is, how do we do that most effectively? And I'm just not so sure that disorganized, spontaneous, chaotic destruction really answers the question that's on the table for us. Whatever it is, I'm not a pacifist, so I don't have a problem with guerrilla warfare under certain circumstances, but it can't be blind, random, destructive, and inhumane. It's got to be something that's thought out, organized, and targeted in ways that are life affirming, as opposed to just randomly destructive and harmful.
And our best movements are led by people who are thinking that way, and they're thinking tactically. I mean, Dr. King was a tactician. Wyatt T. Walker was a tactician. Reverend James Bevel, Reverend Dr. Wyatt T. Walker, Reverend James Bevel, Reverend Hosea Williams, Reverend Reverend Dr. Ralph David Abernathy, Reverend Jesse Jackson, Fannie Lou Hamer. These people were part of movements, and they sat down and thought these issues, Carrie. They thought this through, and there were goals. We've got to have those. It's not enough to be angry. Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. They make you angry. Carrie,
a lot of people, I feel, I was just getting ready to say, you said the key word, being a tactician. I think a lot of people need to get out here and start voting and getting on these juries and eliminating mostly all-white juries. And that would be a process that people need to start doing, is voting every election. Don't vote just because it's the president.
Yeah.
We got to get inside the room. Like we all know, like in Hamilton, I want to be in the room where it happens too.
But you know what? It happens.
But
it not only happens in the White House, but it happens in your house. See, the thing is, movement comes from. I mean, these people govern by our consent. I think one of the mistakes that we made in the Obama era was that we said, okay, he's a black leader now. No, he's an elected leader. Our leaders have never come from government, and if they do, we got a problem.
Right.
You are
That's what I was
talking
saying
about
about.
it.
No, go ahead.
Carrie, and then you, Dwight.
No, oh, that's why I was saying that more people need to vote and get into those juries. Need to get in those jury pools because that's where it needs to change.
Yeah.
That's a start.
You're right. It's a start.
More people got to change their mindset and get more tactical on that.
Dwight,
because look at what they got for the jury pool.
Look at what.
You are talking about a generation that's now selling satanic gym shoes with blood in them.
I was just looking at this
The mentality of this generation is much, much, much different, you all.
You're right.
These have grown up on violence. They all have guns. Carjacking is a national pastime. This is just a different generation. I understand the sentiment and live in hope and grew up in that same movement. I'm just looking at what I'm looking at and trying to share with you all what I see in this thing.
And I think we're in agreement, Dwight. I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just saying that is not where we ought to go, and I think we agree on that. But when anytime this what Lil Nas is selling, he has bought into the sickness of the society, and he's selling gym shoes that are satanic. And a lot of these kids who are in entertainment now are worshipers of Satan. They are. They're satanic. They're Luciferian. That is what they do. And that is our tragedy. And my mother often laments that fact. She says, you know what? Look, we didn't come here to do this. And she's speaking specifically, and my mother and father are survivors of Jim Crow. Yeah, I said survivors of Jim Crow. Survivors. And she said, if you think that we risked our lives and did all of this so that you all could come here and be like this and worship Satan, just so that you could have all of the riches of the world, Jesus turned that down as we are in Holy Week. Satan offered Jesus the world. And he said, no, no. I'm going to go right back and I'm going to fulfill the will and duty of my Father. And if it means my life, that is what it's going to mean. But Satan offered Jesus the whole world. And you know what? These kids are taking it, and shame on them because they ought to know better. Sin is sin. It's just wrong. You're going to sit up here and embrace Satan and embrace the devil. Shame on you. Shame on you. And you're not going to win. I've read Genesis, and I've read Exodus. I've read every book in the Bible. I know in Revelations, I know God has already won. Now, whose side are you going to be on when it's all said and done? Because when it's all said and done, and we will all have the day when it's all said and done, what are you going to do? How will you answer to God? I'm so sick of hearing everybody give God a name, everything but God's name. Tired of it. Either you believe in God or you don't, or you believe in something else, and it ain't God, and you're not going to win. I'm tired of it.
I'm going to echo those sentiments as I sign off, and I think that's the great comfort in all of this, is that God will win, and as anxious as we may all be, as agitated as we all may be, we do know how all of this pumped out.
And you can hear that. Well, you know what? I always say this. I will say this to you as we all go. We were in San Francisco. This is just after my father's first presidential run, and we were in San Francisco for the Democratic convention, and there was a lot of activity around. My father, he was in conference writing his speech, and so there was a lot of, as Dwight has grown up with us, and there was a lot of, just a lot of activity, and out of nowhere, while my mother and father who had 5 kids, and we were all under 21, okay, and we had some of our friends there, and on and on. So it was, sweet was not luxurious. You had people everywhere, and you had hamburgers and French fries everywhere. Because my parents, that's all they let us order because it was cheap. And she said, "That's all you're gonna want to eat anyway. You're not gonna waste our money and food." That having been said, okay. So she comes out and she says, "You know what? Flesh and blood did not reveal this to me, but God is not going to let us go to this White House and be as evil and as wicked as our oppressors. We're going to have to go another way. We're going to have to go God's way." And she repeated, "Flesh and blood did not reveal this to me." She said, "So now either we're going to go in fighting for justice, setting the captive free, eradicating poverty." And she went through this whole list, and you could have heard a church mouse dance on top of the countertop. Because she wasn't speaking, she was being spoken to and through. And I'm going to leave you with that today, everybody. We can write, we can do all these things, and I got it. But either we're going to build a beloved community or it's God's world. God can end this whole thing and start again. And I'm with it. Whatever God wants, I'm with it. I'm with that.
Amen to that.
I'm with it. So I'm on that. So you're right. He said, and Dwight, you bring up the point, making these gym shoes with blood in it. Like, how depraved have we become? These children, God bless them. I wish we could reach them. I wish we hadn't lost them. But they've gotten caught up in the world. As horror. It's black women are viewed through such a depraved lens to see our young ladies in the popular media portraying themselves as people of no morals or of loose morals. It's heartbreaking. When Rosa Parks had to lead a fight almost by herself as the secretary of the NAACP, and it was illegal for her to be a member of the NAACP in the state of Alabama. When she was the secretary, it was secretary of the state NAACP. It was illegal for her to be a member of it. It was illegal for anyone to be a member of it. She went across the state looking for black women who had been raped by white men, and that happened all the time. And she said she made it her business to try and get these cases prosecuted. That was just 7
See,
years
the
ago.
community.
Huh?
Yeah, but the community that produced the Rosa Parks was viewed as a prime target by Satan.
Yes.
And he has succeeded in destroying that community through a number of different means, including mass incarceration and a number of things. So that community has been really, scrambled, separated. The integrity that the community had is no longer there, and the kids suffer for it. They're left to the devices and the schemes and the temptation of the devil. And if dad isn't there, if the church isn't there, if Big Mama isn't there, then this is what we get. So it's just further evidence of the fact that we're in some ways God's people, and so Satan wants us.
Absolutely.
And that's all I'm saying. And all I'm saying is that, and Doc King said, in lieu of that community, chaos.
Yeah.
He put two options on the table. One was community, the other one was chaos.
Yeah.
And since there's a total breakdown in community, my fear is that chaos will prevail. I'm praying against it, hoping against it, and if I need to burn candles and sacrifice on Lent, my chicken wings, I'm really against it. But what I see on the horizon, you all, is chaos.
But Dwight, we agree with you. We're just saying, like you are, that we hope against hope, and for hope, that will not be the case. And we are just saying that we need to go this away and not that away. But as you made the point, Dr. King asked, where do we go from here? Is it chaos or community? And so, I'm hearing you, and you're right. You've been right about so much. It's prophetically so. I'm still going to push for us to get, as the song says, get right, church. prosperity gospel?
Or-
Oh, okay. We should prosper. But that's a spiritual concept, not a material one. We're gonna have to get right because what we've got a young man who is selling sneakers, and they will sell with blood in it. That's not gonna work. We're not gonna be blessed. I love you, everybody. Mark
All right.
Fancher, bless your heart.
Yep.
If you can join me tomorrow
Thank you.
morning, that would be great because I want us to review this trial and I want people to get some good information. Some good information. That's important. So let me know if you'll be available. Mike, excuse me, Dwight, the same. Carrie, what is your final thought, sweetie?
I'm going to sign off, but yeah, I can talk to you in the morning.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Perfect. Get you
Right.
settled.
Okay then.
Yes, dear.
Okay.
I love you. I love you and all your guests.
I love
and
you.
I agree with Dwight. And to me, the big neutron bomb in the room is filibuster. We'll all know where we're at if we can get rid of that.
Absolutely, and we're gonna have to fight for it. And sometimes we're gonna have to fight the people who are closest to us for it, and make them do it.
That's right.
Make them
That's
do
right.
it. Make them do it.
That's right.
No.
And I want to ask you one question. How's your dad?
Oh, you're so sweet. He is doing well. As long he is in fact,
Well,
he's on his
good.
way to therapy. Like he's in therapy right now. He has to do that every day of the
Good.
week. And it has been an elixir for him. It is really he sounds so much better. But Parkinson's is a very real disease, Carrie. But I tell you what, the only reason he's still here is because of your prayers, and I want to thank you for that. Want to thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for thinking of him. That's so sweet of you to ask. And thank you for calling in, Carrie from Champaign.
Yes. Yeah.
One of my first callers. I was like, he's in Champaign? What's he doing calling up here? But you are so sweet. I'm sending you much love, and I pray that you will listen to us tomorrow. And if you take a notion, call again.
Okay, I will.
Sending you much love, my lovin'. Happy Easter to you, but I hope to speak with you before then. How about that?
All right.
I love
Same to you. Bye.
Thank you, sweetie. Have a great day. Dwight McKee, I love you. Thank you so much, Dylan. Thanks for a great show, everybody. I love you, love you, love you. Paul, I know you. I saw you getting up, getting happy because I had to get someone straight. Ain't that nothing? And Adrian and is it Carissa and Hannah and Daryl and Andre, my brother, and Chapearl. Great show. I can't believe you didn't call in, Chapearl. Wow. Lorraine, I love you and love this show. Thank you for keeping everybody in line. You and El Stanley and Meddy and Marnie. And let me thank you, Hannah and Vicky and Madeline and Daphne and oh boy, because this thing kind of runs out. Vicky, I'm sorry, hey Vicky and Philip and Kenneth and Paula. No, I'm not. Paul, I ain't taking none of that. Because you know what? I want us to have a platform. I want us to have a comfortable space in which we have uncomfortable conversations. But we've got to do it. We have to learn how to be kind to each other and get on the other side of what you say to someone, say about someone, and how you say things to people. I try to be sensitive to that. I'm not always successful. Heaven knows I'm not. But we have to think about that. Just, whoa, you got to watch how you say things, and sometimes you say things to people and you don't even know what their backgrounds are. And you say, wow, I wish I had known. Try to keep that on the front side, because you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know where they've been. You don't know where they're going, but you do know that their encounter with you can be holy. It can be kind. I'm not always going to make it myself. I trust me, I do not. I absolutely do not. But as I get older, as I mature in years and in my faith, I really try to keep that in mind. And I thank God for that awareness. And, for my father constantly saying, hey, get on the other side of what you say about someone or what you think of someone or what you've accused someone of doing or being. We have to grow up spiritually, everybody. It's time. It's time. Love you, Dwight. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you. Love you so much. Bye bye.